Hey everyone, welcome to the stream. I am here with the amazing Spook, who is a prolific streamer, comrade, indie game developer, and I'm just a huge fan of his work. So I'm really excited to have him here to have this discussion. I'm just going to get ahead of this right off the bat. I did get Invisalign braces on a couple of days ago. So if I sound a bit off, just know that I'm trying my absolute darndest to enunciate for you all. But yeah, that's what's going on. But anyway, very excited to have this conversation. We're going to talk about Hawaiian civilization, past, present, and future. We're going to talk about land back and decolonization. And we're going to talk about Spook's really amazing cyberpunk adventure game called Neofeud, which has a lot of really awesome anti-capitalist, anti-racist, and decolonial themes in it. So in the description box below, I have listed all the places where you can find Neofeud and Spook and the rest of it. So yeah, just thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm really excited to have the conversation. Like I said, I'm a big fan. My partner is a really big fan. So he's really excited that we're having this talk as well. So I guess just for anyone who isn't familiar with you and your work, could you maybe introduce yourself and talk a bit about what you do?
Sure. Again, thanks again so much. Very excited to be on this channel. Been following your work for a long time, and yeah. Also, shout out to your partner who got us introduced. Aloha, ko'ui noa o Chris. Hi, my name is Chris. I am a native Hawaiian, or also known as Silver Spook. I'm a native Hawaiian activist. Defender of our sacred mountain, Mauna Kea, here on the Big Island of Hawaii, under the ongoing illegal occupation of Hawaii by the United States Empire. So I'm, in addition to the activism that I do, in a variety of ways. I do a lot of streaming and education, but I also do cyberpunk adventure game making with anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, anti-racist, anti-colonial characteristics. Cyberpunk adventure games in particular, but not exclusively. I'm going to try to branch out. But the number one flagship game as of now is, of course, Neofeud. That's hopefully legible and not mirrored reverse. Yeah, looks good. Anyways, Neofeud is the game that is the flagship game. It's a cyberpunk adventure game that's about my experiences as a native Hawaiian, as a social worker, a STEM teacher for the underserved and at-risk youth of Honolulu, Hawaii, where I'm from. The not so nice side of the coconut trees, as we say, and it's about living below billionaires up on the hills while you are living 20 to a house, and or living in your car, or living next to meth lab above the highway, which is a variety of these situations is the way that we were living on Oahu while I was working full time, because they don't pay teachers and social workers enough to not live in Mazda tributes and eat spoonfuls of peanut butter for dinner. So anyways, Neofeud is about surviving under capitalism, under imperialism, under colonization, under, a very racist world. Most of the kids that I work with were non-white, Filipino, asylum seekers from Puerto Rico, escapees from America's slightly more Western Pacific colony, Philippines, Marshall Islands, 56 nuclear weapon detonation survivors, all kind of other people, poor white people from Louisiana, and that was who I was working with, and this area. And the Neofeud is very much like taking all those experiences and also growing up, in a very impoverished area that nobody really knows about, very well hidden secret by the greatest and terriblest superpower that's ever existed here in Hawaii. So it's a place that's very, it's like ultra America. It's like the most American place in so many ways. And I should probably stop ranting. I'm going to try to channel this a little bit better. But that's mostly what Neofeud is actually at the deepest level about, is my personal experiences. But it's more universally a cyberpunk adventure game that deals with, has a lot of references to the Matrix, and there's $6 billion baller gangsters that kind of look a little bit like John Connor, but not really. There's a lot of hippie Terminators that got their legs shot off, like putting down leftist uprisings for the U.S. empire in the second Dresden firebombing, and now they're all, just limping around trying to get their PTSD therapy credits and their social security checks. But the U.S. is like, I don't know if we're going to help you out anymore because you're not useful to us. And so it's got a lot of it's like very serious, very dealing with extremely serious things, including missing and murdered indigenous peoples. Today is Orange Shirt Day, very important day. It deals with what happens to internally and externally colonized people, and it also deals with, and this does happen on the screen. So there's scenes that are very difficult and extremely serious. The things that I've witnessed. I'm going to save a little bit more of that for later, but it also is a lot of satirical comedy and, Matrix agents, speaking of Matrix resurrections, people getting shot and then falling down and then standing back up. And then, people shooting random, very large objects out of windows. There's a lot of Die Hard references, a lot of 80s action movie references, and a lot of cyberpunk references. A lot of, if you read a lot of William Gibson, you're like a neuromancer. You're like an OG cyberpunk, not this CP2077 quadruple nonsense. You like your Matrix, you like your neuromancer, you like your sprawl, you like your original anti-corporate takedown of Reaganomics and Thatcheronomics turned up to 11, which was what the original Gibsonian, Sterlingian, the OG cyberpunk was about, which is what I like. I'm also an interviewer. I'm the Gibson Whisperer. I interview William Gibson because, and then I tell him how he's not radical enough. That's what I do. That's what, because he wrote, of course, the original Neuromancer, from which Cyberpunk 2077, 2020, and Shadowrun all plagiarized their ideas, like Night City and Nguyen. But he wasn't radical enough, so I have to tell him, hey, you gotta fix that. Anyway, so Neofeud is what I think cyberpunk misses in another way, and then I kind of try to infuse it with all the things that I think can only be said, but the things that I think it's missing as somebody who lives high tech, low life, fully just impoverished existence, and where I had to walk to work a lot of the time. I had to bike to work sometimes. My 30-year-old Toyota Corolla, constantly dripping gas and oil, and I got reprimanded by my abusive landlord to say you can't have this car because this car is messing up my beautiful white pavement in this Hawaii that I own. And I moved here from California with millions of dollars. And so anyway, so Neofeud it's about all of that. It's about all of these interlocking systems. And this was an intro, but I'm sorry. That's what Neofeud's about.
No, it's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, the background of our stream actually is a still from Neofeud. So yeah, like I said, there are links in the description box below. If you want to go check it out, you can buy it on Steam. We're gonna start by talking about land back and other things, but we're gonna really dig into Neofeud and all of the themes later. So after we're done talking, I'm actually gonna go back through the stream and put chapter information in. So if anyone's coming back to the talk, you can find the different sections where we talk, and we're gonna talk at one point high level, so without spoilers for Neofeud, just about a lot of the themes, and then we're going to talk about it with a spoiler full section, so you can decide if you want to stay for that or play the game first before coming back to that analysis. But yeah, thank you for that introduction. So I thought to start off, I wanted to ask you about indigenous civilization, and in particular Hawaiian civilization prior to colonization and the illegal US occupation, because I think most Westerners, most settlers really have absolutely no idea the kind of social governance systems and technologies and whatnot that were in place there and that were just completely destroyed by colonialism. Myself included, sadly, until listening to hearing you talk about all of that, it was just really illuminating. So could you talk a bit about that, about Hawaiian civilization prior to U.S. colonialism and everything that destroyed?
Sure. Is it possible to share screen? Can we do that?
Yeah. Actually, I have no idea how. Can I give you the power to do that? I can share my screen.
Okay. Sure. Okay. Well, I just clicked share screen. If not, yeah. Are you
Is it working?
No. Sure. Okay, I clicked share, but it doesn't seem to want to allow me to share. It says, you get anything? If not, it's okay.
No. Yeah, sorry. I don't know how to make, because it doesn't, yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll just go over
Sorry
it.
about that.
No, it's fine. So anyways, so yeah, Hawaii is Hawaii is a place that's very, as I said, a lot of people don't really know that much about it, but I would like many indigenous peoples, which have been settler colonized across the earth, have a lot of, like, let's just say, lies told about them. Basically, there's a lot of disinformation regarding who they were, who we were, right? And what our practices, our culture, our civilizations, our systems of governance. I mean, everything. It's part of the multi-century colonial atrocity and really just kind of tragedy that we're finally, thankfully, starting to get out of. But so in Hawaii, like I could go very a long ways back, but to kind of briefly touch on it, the Hawaiian people, right, had a lot of, I often say I'm Native Hawaiian, so what is your ideology? And I'm like, well, I'm not necessarily an anarchist, socialist, posadist, fully automated luxury space flying spaghetti monstrous. What are you, right? Are you Marxist, this and that? And like, all these, not to throw shade at any of these, schools of thought that are important, but and they have history behind them. But for me, I'm identify as I follow, Pono, Kuleana, Aloha Aina. These are ancient values. Aloha, it doesn't just mean hello, welcome to, this beautiful, 767 that you're on now, and here's a nice lei, and here's your single serving Dole pineapple juice, extreme colonizer. Also work with Chiquita and United Fruit Company, all our good friends in the drained veins of Latin America. He operated in Hawaii. That's the pineapple that you're getting, by the way, when you're getting pineapple in Hawaii. And thank you so much for coming. Aloha. You get on that plane and you fly into your high thread count hotel, with a nice air condition that costs $2,000 a night. Well, especially if you're staying on Larry Ellison's island that he owns. Anyways, so that aloha doesn't just mean hello. It means a lot more than that. Aloha means it's a deep, wide ocean of love. Like the ha is like the breath, the breath of life. Like when Hawaiian, when we introduce and when we say hello, like traditionally, you put it's the Hawaiian kiss is like you put your foreheads together and you share ha. That's the breath. And aloha, there's something very important to our value system that is entwined in the language, entwined in the culture, the way of being. And it's a very like to the Western mind, I think they would describe the language as extremely metaphorical. It's full of poetry. The way I think about it is, if poetry is it's crossing the artificial boundaries that are set between science, technology, engineering, mathematics, biology, spirituality, culture, environment, right? And so poetry is a disconnected mass violence, and I would argue mass disinformation based barbaristic way of being is when this and when you, in order to do that, you have to compartmentalize and kind of do a lot of cognitive dissonance, right? So the way that the Western mind breaks everything up into these little compartments. This is biology over here, and business and pleasure, right? And so my business, I go and I blow up Afghanistan and commit war crimes all over the world. Then I come home and I'm a good person because I kiss my kids at night and I didn't cheat on my wife this week, and so that means I'm good now, and I can go to church and fix it if I did cheat on my wife and do something terrible, or my partner, or my non-binary, or a romantic lover. I'm a good person because I put an LGBTQ plus symbol on my Tomahawk missile that I shot into Afghanistan, and now I'm fixed, right? And that's separate from all of my business that I do, right? That's business over there and pleasure over here, right? I get on a plane, I fly to Hawaii, and I do terrible things there, and I abuse their culture there, and so this separation is like not. I would argue that the holistic viewpoint of a lot of indigenous civilizations. Now, I can't speak for every indigenous civilization, and most of the planet is indigenous, by the way. We're going to get to that eventually, but including Asia, Turtle Island, and all of Africa and the Pacific. Most of the planet is. And so for us as Native Hawaiians, aloha means a deep, wide ocean of love. It's the sharing of ha, and it's not just a romantic love. It's what does love even mean? I argue like English is such a stormtrooper language, because these words are so abused, right? What is this? What is sorry even mean? My partner is Canadian, by the way, or from so-called Canada. So yeah, shout out to allies from settler colonial places who are on their path to things we'll talk about later. But anyways,
tearing those places down.
Holly is a place where they say a lot of sorry, but what does sorry mean, right? What does sorry really mean when you say sorry and then you're still spending $100 million, right, suing indigenous people after you so supposedly care about the indigenous residential school genocide that Canada's committed? What does sorry mean, right? What does justice mean when courts are kidnapping Meng Wanzhou and committing international, crime on the behalf of bigger empires than them? That's the Canadian court system, is just, it's lawfare. That's what I'd argue, right? What does these words even mean, right? So but this way you can say, well, we have reconciliation, we have justice, we have freedom and equality and democracy, and there's no law. This is when I'm feeling a little more mask off. There's no rule of the United States is rule of law free, democracy free, white supremacist, capitalist, collapsing failed empire like the entire Western world, all the colonizer world, but to maintain the facade that there exists civilization anywhere in that world, you have to break up all of reality into these little boxes, and you call it business, pleasure, right? Law. And then all those 2.5 million disproportionately Black kids that are rubber stamped by a legal system, right? Because judges put every person that is doing for-profit mechanical separation of vegan and non-vegan Whole Foods cheese, like many children that I work with, and were mass arrested. Fun fact, Hawaii has the highest rate of mass incarceration by schools calling up the police and having them round up children, disproportionately BIPOC kids in school. Hawaii, the highest in the United States. We're 6 times more likely to be shot by police in Hawaii as a non-white person than in the U.S. So that's twice as bad as the rate of the United States. So when I say it's ultra America, I mean Hawaii is like a very well kept secret, very well kept. But that's the justice system that puts all those people there. The justice system that is like currently being weaponized as lawfare, right? It's not courts. This is barbarism with Judge Judy characteristics. That's what the court system is in the West. Anyways, so for back to Hawaiian values, I'm supposed to be talking about Hawaiian values, not going off about the West. But it's hard to really talk about these things without really differentiating them from what they aren't. And so for Native Hawaiians, aloha means a deep, wide ocean of love. It means everybody coming together and everybody caring about each other. Like when you come to Hawaii, if you get off the, when Holly came, for example, right? She was immediately cis, or anti. Okay, not anti in the beginning. Like anti is when you get, it's like, hey, I'm not that old. Okay, I'm just getting married now. But depending on who it is, like if you're younger, you might call someone auntie. Even people that you don't know, even people that are not your immediate relatives, right? But if they're not like immediately there to do harm, and they're not acting in a way, and you know this because there's somebody who shows up and they have big colonizer energy. They're like, I'm gonna buy all your territory and build a golf course and a third, Hyatt, 4 Seasons on top of your land. You can tell that. When somebody's showing up to, make a lot of money, like Mr. Ellison does. And Mr. Zuckerberg, who has 1,200 acres of our land and suing the state of Hawaii to kick us off of our own land. So when that's happening, right? And so aloha means everybody, coming together, and it's really about the interconnectedness from people to people, from people to nation, and the people and the earth, right? Aloha Aina means the love of the Aina. Aina means something very different than any word in the English language. What does land mean, right? What does private property mean, right? Aina comes from the word kinda, that means that which feeds, that which sustains. The word private property in the Western world denotes that which is bought and sold and generally for the private gains of landlords, corporate lords, or some lord or some capitalist or some slave owner or some colonialist, right? That's what private property denotes. And intellectual property is the digitization, the digital land grabbing of the Turtle Island of cyberspace, really, right? And of mind space and of idea space, right? That projects into everything. And that's the way we think of everything. And that's why you can't say certain things, and you whistle more than 6 notes of a particular Disney tune, and then you get sued, right? Or whatever. So anyway, so that's the Hawaiian values system. Aloha, kuleana, pono. Kuleana is responsibility. Responsibility to each other, responsibility to the land, to malama aina, to love the land, to care for the land that feeds and sustains through the ahupua'a system. I could go along into any of one of these things, but so that's a lot of the deep Hawaiian values. And pono, ua malke'ea o ka ana ika pono, was spoken after Hawaii was successfully through great Hawaiian diplomacy and struggle it was temporarily the sovereign country of Hawaii was temporarily colonized by Britain, but then was restored by Admiral Thomas, a place called Thomas Square in Hawaii. I don't know if many people realize this, but in Thomas Square, if you've ever been there in Honolulu, Hawaii, where I'm from, it's a place where Admiral Thomas officially said that Hawaii is returned to Hawaii, that this was a mistake, and that Britain does not claim Hawaii as part of its territory. It was a mistake of a lower-ranking officer who came on a ship. And anyway, so the life of ua malke'ea okana ika pono means the life of the land is perpetuated in life. The life of the land is perpetuated in righteousness, or the sovereignty of the land is perpetuated in righteousness. And that's very important, which ties into land back as well. The sovereignty of the land. The land itself has value. The land, as opposed to just a bunch of future, capitalist validation tokens in somebody's privileged, New York or Cayman Island server somewhere. That's what land is. It's future. Well, if you're in Canada, maple trees that could be chopped down and turned into billions of dollars that could be stored in somebody's, fully automated luxury space fascist capitalism server, because there's not going to be earth left if they chop all of the things that could be turned into little capitalist validation tokens, right? That's what land is. Land is the thing that we can put slaves on that we stole from some other indigenous people, like Turtle Island First Nations people. And then we maximize all of our return on investment. And that's the Western way. So that's the Western barbarist way, or the Western colonialist way, or Western feudalist way, the Western capitalist way, the Western slavery way, which I argue all these continue to exist in perpetuity. And the temporal compartmentalization in feudalism happened there, but you still have monarchs, and 50% plus of Britain wants to go back to that. So wait, feudalism is not gone, actually. And also, Elon Musk declared himself techno king of Tesla and filed with the SEC to be transferred his title into CEO/king. So thanks, Elon, for making Neofeud. Thanks for making me feel very validated in my predictions of your feudalism capitalism merger, like full mask off. I mean, keep the mask on a little longer. You're embarrassing yourself right now, Elon techno king, with your master of coin /CFO. Clown. Anyways, so I can't help it. I got to just rip a little bit while I'm saying Hawaii, because it's hard. That's the difference. So that's what a lot of what Hawaiian values. I'm talking a very wide and big picture right now. There's a lot more specific. If you want a lot of specific historical details, Adam Keawe, ADAM KEAWE is Instagram and Twitter and elsewhere. Adam is a very great Hawaiian and Filipino historian, 2 different colonized people in the Pacific. And Adam has a lot of historical details on a lot of this. But anyways, so that's a lot of the what makes Hawaiian, what land back, for Hawaiians, like I say, land back doesn't mean exchanging control and domination of land and people. It is about ending domination, and control and abuse of land and people, right? And that's part of the ua malke'ea oka aina ika pono. It doesn't really translate to anything in English, because I would argue that there's not really anything that really values land in and of itself, right? And not like land, like we just want to worship the land like it's it's like the land has value, the nature has value, the aina has value, right? It is our mother. You can't buy and sell your mother, and it's not just like, oh well, these are superstitious Hawaiians and they think the land literally gave birth to them, and no, we understand that the land didn't like literally have a woman that opened up and then we flew out of it. It's a metaphorical understanding of the ecological and the deep interconnected relationships that modern Western scientists are like, oh my goodness, you mean like the last 300, 400, 500 years of what we white so-called scientists have been doing and corporations have been doing is kind of incorrect, and now we've been the biggest economy for less than 200 years and we're already running our entire planet into the ground. The Hawaiians like encode a lot of these values and all of this science, also it's environmental science, into, and not just Hawaiians, Turtle Island indigenous people, our indigenous relatives in Asia, in fact, our indigenous relatives in Africa, encode a lot of this knowledge into poetry and art. And because of racism and colonialism, which will go together, these kind of just get dismissed as superstition, backward thinking, savage, all these terrible racist ideas, just nonsense. And but that's what a lot of this actually is. It's about understanding that you need to care for the land, you need to care for the aina, and you need to care for other people. And also, if we don't exist in mutual respect with each other, right, and respect and love of the land and each other, person to person and nation to nation, this causes great problems, violence, and war and destruction, and we don't want to have that, right? We want to live, and that's why I argue what indigeneity really means to me. Like, it's an English word. English, Spanish, French words all terrible because they're used by broken people. But anyways, but the word indigenous, it means to be indigenous means to not be colonial ultimately, and so to respect each other, right, as people, to respect each other's culture, religions, language, right? Hawaiian was banned until 1986, and so that's not being indigenous. That's being colonial, right? It's like, you're gonna be exactly like us. When in Rome, you do as Romans do, but also when you're in Africa, when you're in Asia, wherever we show up, you will do as the Romans do. In fact, and if you don't, we're gonna hang you up on a very nice artisanal lynching machine. It's called a crucifix. That's why America, they're less creative with the way that they do their lynching. Sometimes with a white knee on a black neck. But the Romans, they were like upstart Etsy, imperial. They show up and they make a very beautiful cross to slay the people that didn't do exactly what they said and speak the language that they said, and pick up flying spears and stab somebody else who didn't do what they said. So that's the difference between colonial culture. I love Reservation Dogs, where it's like, white Jesus is like, hey, Jesus and me, this indigenous ancestor is talking to his Turtle Island. It's in Oklahoma, and it's talking to his descendant, and he's like, Jesus and me, we have a lot in common. We're like this, Jesus, a brown man, got cut down in the prime of his life, just like me, both by giant whites, both by giant Western empires, in fact, right? And so, but that ties the Romans and the Americans together. I call America the Star-Spangled Roman Empire. Often, it's like they put a falcon on top of their shields, or their so-called unsinkable aircraft carriers that are very sinkable by very cheap Chinese missiles. But anyways, so back to Hawaii though. So I gotta finish this up because I know I'm going too long. But Hawaii that's really the core values, and just really. This is probably not going to be really quickly, but specifically after, just a few facts. So Hawaiians lived on average 80 to 100 years, according to Captain Cook, who had said, I had never seen Hawaiians, I had never seen anyone that I had met this old. And this people had to be at least 100 years old. And everybody was very robust. Everybody's very healthy. And they're not dying of diseases, plagues, or in constant warring, right? This is a big problem that Europe had, which is like constant violence, inter-religious strife, castle to castle. The 7 years war, 100 years war, 30 years war. French on British, British on French, right? German, French, Ottoman Empire coming over, Christian, Protestant, constant warfare, nasty, brutish, short lives, as the somebody who wrote some things in Europe once said. And he's also quoted in Neofeud, Mr. Hobbes. But like this, and then they badly copied a Chinese system of meritocracy, and they call it. Well, we're going to have a centralized government that will stomp all this down, just like those people had. In fact, the A levels and were plagiarized by Europe. So also, what else? The black powder that they came to fight opium wars and steal all the silk and tea as well, all plagiarized from an indigenous civilization with 56 different ethnic regions that still can speak their language, including the Uyghurs. Which is so. This is part of why there's a lot of where my language was banned. That's the difference. If you have a system organized on mass violence, right, on forcing your ways on other people, then you can't get you end up with monocultures, with McDonald's on every block, and everybody forced to speak French, like in Senegal, there's pays colonial tax to France, and that kind of thing. And everybody forced or getting beaten and killed in schools, right? Like the residential schools, right? If you don't speak English and practice Christianity, we'll kill the Indian, save the man. Or maybe we'll just kill the Indian, period, which is what they did there. And they're still doing. In fact, ask my good relative, La Su, who is a very important educator. So anyway, so for Hawaiians, that's what it really means is, what all of this ultimately means is to respect each other, to respect other people, respect other people's languages, respect other people's cultures, push for peaceful solutions, not for forcing our ways, right? Win-lose solutions, right? That's colonialism. Oh, yeah, we blow you up and we take all your stuff, right? We illegally occupy you, we take all of your culture, we commodify. That's Hawaii. We show up in Africa for 500 years, Europe, France, Spain, Canada, the US. The US and France currently have 1/3 of France is lit up. It's electrified by one Niger uranium deposit that France has all of its military bases around. So how many hundreds of years more is it going to take for Europe, America, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and all you Western barbarists to materially, practice, indigenous, non-colonial, win-win cooperation with Africa? How long is it going to take? Is it another 7 centuries? What's it going to? Because that's what you're still doing, by the way. France, Europe, U.S. So anyways, so that's the difference to me between win-win cooperation between people, between Aloha Aina working together. Hui, the word hui, the silver spook hui, that's what we call it here. The word hui. It has many meanings, but it is a word in Hawaiian, Chinese, Vietnamese, and Maori that means working together collectively, cooperatively. It can mean a meeting, right? But it could be also mean like hui in the diaspora. A Chinatown hui in Los Angeles could mean pooling resources to collectively start a restaurant or a credit rotating cooperative credit union to give people the funds to start up a laundromat, because of the Chinese Exclusion Act, and the thing that a lot of people don't want to talk about, especially now when you're trying to start nuclear war with the most advanced indigenous civilization, that's China presently. Anyways, we don't talk about that, but that's part of the racism. But the hui is survival. It's working together cooperatively in the diaspora under internal colonization, and Chinatowns are survival against the mass genocide and lynching, by the way. That's what Chinatown is. I'm a descendant of a Chinatown, in fact, of Hawaiian, Chinese, Vietnamese, Japanese, Korean, and other Asian and Pacific Islanders that survived mass lynching in Hawaii. That's we'll talk more about later. But so hui means working together, not exclusively in these very difficult times, but also you could be a Vietnamese pho restaurant in Vietnam. Could be a rice paddy in China, working together collectively to tend to the rice, and then those people who need the rice, they get fed. Not one person sitting at the top collecting vast quantities of profit as the landlord, the corporate lord, et cetera, exploiting the labor value of the workers. Now, this was not invented. Marx, Kropotkin were not even twinkles in their parents' eyes when this is a multi-thousand-year-old word. You know how you know that? Because the distance between Hawaii and China, thousands of miles, right? Across Pacific Ocean, navigated using advanced wayfinding techniques that you can witness tacky, watered-down, commodified version of in Disney's Moana, which is thanks for that. But next time, let's have Native Hawaiian and Indigenous people actually writing, producing, and controlling their own narratives. Like kind of like more like Reservation Dogs with Taika Waititi, Scarlett Harjo, and we'll try to do. It's pretty good, but we're going to want to do better next time. But anyway, so this hui, the word hui, survived thousands of miles of Austronesian and other indigenous migrations across the Pacific through Samoa, Fiji, Tahiti, all the way through Palau, or what's called the Federal States of Micronesia today, but Satawal, where Maopiailug, one of the last great navigators under the colonization and extermination of a lot of cultures in the Pacific, the last wayfinder who taught Nainoa Thompson, who navigated the Hokulea from Hawaii to Tahiti with no GPS, no modern instruments in the way that we had by using the stars and using ocean currents, not just stars, ocean currents, animal patterns, the color of clouds, green clouds. I study this a bit. I'm not an expert wayfinder by any stretch, but I did take astronomy specifically at the University of Hawaii too. And I did have Nainoa Thompson show up, one of the great navigators, to show up to teach me about what that means and what that means for our people as well, as not just a cultural resurrection, cultural revitalization, cultural renaissance for Hawaiians. Anyway, so that navigation technique that we used to arrive here thousands of years ago, right? The word hui survives all of that. In fact, hui. When you say hui in Hawaiian, it means, hey, come here. We're gonna have a meeting. We're gonna talk about what we're gonna do, right? A hui ho till we come and meet again. That's a phrase in Hawaiian. Hui, la hui. The Native Hawaiians on Mauna Kea were resisting illegal multi-billion-dollar corporate projects backed by Mr. Gordon Moore, surveillance capitalist, imperialist in chief. No, he's just a co-founder of Intel. And also supporter of the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation that works with 30 Canadian universities, Justin Trudeau himself, 30 dozens of American universities, the UC California system with Gianna Napolitano, ex-Homeland Security Officer under the greatest war criminal the U.S. has ever had. I'm sorry that he had to come from illegal occupied Hawaii. President Obama, Gianna Napolitano personally was invested in installing an illegal project on Mauna Kea, which I participated in, and the La Hui, right? All of us, our nation together under illegal occupation on that mountain with Jason Momoa and Dwayne The Rock Johnson showed up if you were paying attention to that. But the La Hui is all of us together as a nation as well, working together for our sovereignty. Shaokang Shahui is a Chinese word that that's a long topic, but in Chinese, this is what they are pushing for. This great sovereign country that survived 100 years of humiliation and now has the greatest poverty alleviation and successes on the earth in history ever. In fact, in anything that anybody left of Biden would call important, poverty alleviation, environmentalism, all of these categories, they are the most successful. Present advanced technological indigenous civilization. Shakang Shahui is a Chinese word that means the moderate prosperity. Shakang Shahui, like Lahui, means society. Moderately prosperous society, as opposed to exorbitantly prosperous, moderately prosperous for all people and the land, right? The Aina. As opposed to exorbitantly prosperous for Mr. Bezos or Mr. Louis XIV or Mr. Roman Empire and oligarchy behind him, right? And then abject poverty and terrible existence and nasty, brutish sadness for everyone else, right? That's a very important value that they are trying to live by. And they're not perfect. We're not perfect. Hawaiians weren't perfect. Our ancestors in Taiwan, which is a 37,000-year-old indigenous civilizations that have existed there as well. We're not perfect people. We're not like have no violence, have no wrong. No, that's not true. I do wrong things all the time, and I hope Holly calls me out on them and does. I try to learn 3 wrong things every day because I'm half stormtrooper because I speak English, and I went to an Emperor Palpatine training facility called any American or any Western school. So, anyways, so finally, I'm going off way too long on this. But that's the general history of. Actually, I'll just jump off into the thread that I wanted to kind of talk about. So that's what Hawaiian values are. That's how they differentiate, and also how we connect to all our other indigenous relatives across the Asian and Pacific region, which are completely not understood. I will just say this. In the Western world, you know how I know this? Because I went to a $20,000 a year Emperor Palpatine training facility, and I didn't learn any of this, in fact. And then I went to Harvard. I went to Harvard. you know, I'm so happy to be on this channel because now I have 1 degree of separation between me and Richard Wolff. I'm a big fan. One of a handful of 0.101% truth sayers, saying people say true things in the West. So Richard Wolff, you know, shout out, you know, brought the hui, brought a multi-thousand-year concept into the Western world. It's a really good thing because he was a very great sponsor of worker-owned cooperatives and democracy in the workplace. And it's very important that that's a way that things continue to try to be organized. And so, anyways, the Richard Wolff, because I know Richard was on this show. It's that value is very important that we continue to, you know. I'm not saying that like this is not to say that what we're perfect and everybody has to just listen. No, that's not. We're not perfect. We have a lot of things. We have a lot of things that we all collectively are working on. But there's much wisdom. There's much lies that has to be debunked. There's much false things, right? That are said. And you know this, if you work in a corporate business, you know you have to lie all the time about, you know, what the actual APR financing rate, you know, when those 0809 mortgages are going to blow up. If you work at a bank, you know, as I was studying to be a Goldman Sachs high frequency trading algorithm programmer, and you know that all those no income, no jobs, no assets loans that you're going to make for all of those $7.50 an hour Applebee's waitresses, they can't afford that $1.5 million mansion, right? You have to lie every second of the day in the West. You know, you have to lie to yourself, to lie to your employees. You have to lie to that you're taking their labor value. Actually, you have to lie to your customers that you're selling these toxic subprime products that are going to blow up the entire global economy. You have to lie. You cannot. You have to lie to yourself that you're fighting for freedom, justice, and democracy when you go blow up children in Afghanistan working for the military-industrial complex, which is what most people in the United States do, in fact. Every district in the United States is in some way, whether you're making nuts and bolts for F-22 Raptors, you're programming the artificial intelligence that's going to autopilot a Raptor or a Reaper or a Predator drone, or you're the lawyer for the giant Amazon that has a $10 billion contract with AWS for the DoD. You are working for the military at every second of the day in some way, in most capacities, or you're literally on the front lines shooting brown people for continued colonization, right? Probably in Asia, because guess what? You know, Afghanistan is full of Asian people that are also Muslim. Anyway, so back to Hawaii. Many Americans think that Hawaiians lived in huts prior to colonization. The U.S. actually deindustrialized Hawaii before 1898. Hawaii already had electricity, mass transit, railroads. Iolani Palace had electric lights before the White House. Now, I'm going to post a thread where you can look this up. Let's see. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit disorganized here. Yeah, so here's the thread where you can look at the actual history of Hawaii. Just some of it, and you feel free to look. Adam Calvi again has a lot more of all of the receipts for all of this historical research. So anyway, Hawaii, Iolani Palace had electric lights before the White House, and it has the article here. Honolulu Electric Works, starting of the machinery, everything works well. We are glad to be able to at last inform our readers that lighting of Honolulu is un fait accompli. So basically, Hawaii, after contact, Hawaii had a huge amount of Hawaii already had a very advanced civilization. Again, right? Captain Cook himself was like, we had 100-year life expectancies, 80+ year life expectancy. Meaning what? We were not fighting wars constantly, not abusing each other constantly, not causing famine like what the British were doing to a lot of their people, like what other peoples of Europe were doing to their people, and either through poverty, exploitation of resources, constant sectarian strife and warring, right? So the Hawaiians did that. There's not zero war. There was not zero violence. There was not zero inequality. We could say economic inequality, but however, there was the overarching way was what we call, partially automated indigenous anarcho-socialism or something. It doesn't really translate exactly, but what it was is people were living lives in relative peace and relative equality. Otherwise you couldn't get to 80, 100-year life expectancies. That now the United States is, and the Western world is approaching these kind of things, even with all the advanced technology, but they're not even close to where Hawaiians were in this time. U.S. is dropping life expectancy. I think it dropped a year last year. Now it's like 77, 76. Anyways, so Hawaiians but after contact with it's not colonizer technologies. This is a very important thing. Indigeneity is not pre-technological. It's not dancing with cellophane. It's not dancing with grass skirts, living in mud huts. With canoes and no electricity, right? and no roads. I hate this. This is not true. This is false. This is part of the lies of colonialism, that to be indigenous, if you don't do your powwow with, their feather headdress, and you aren't like acting and talking like an Indian in the way in Turtle Island, then you're not indigenous anymore. You have to look exactly like what European and white Westerners want you to look like. Otherwise, you're not going to give you any money to make any movies or games or asset. We're not going to fund you, because that's indigeneity. And I've had a lot of friends and fellow indigenous game devs be refused because it doesn't look indigenous enough for white expectations of what indigenous people look like in Turtle Island, or even in Hawaii, or in Aotearoa, which is New Zealand, the indigenous name of New Zealand. So anyways, so that's very important. So Hawaii had advanced technology, had advanced mass transit, railroads. Like the pictures, this is not a railroad built by the United States. These are Hawaiians, the sovereign Hawaiian country constructed these roads with engineers, Hawaiian engineers and Hawaiian operators, built these railroads. Okay, we had towns and cities. We had more advanced and developed than many places in the United States. Hawaii had the highest literacy rate in the world. Hawaii had a higher literacy rate than US and Europe. Before colonization, the banning of our culture and language, erasure of our history, and ghettoization. Hawaiians were often bilingual or trilingual and world-renowned diplomats. So this is one of the thread tweets below it is a newspaper article that was published in 1869. A native Hawaiian historian reported Hawaii was the only Pacific government to be represented at an exposition in Paris. Granted, its first constitution in 1840 by King Kamehameha III. Very important to understand that the word king, because the Western stormtrooper language of English is broken, the word king is not equivalent to what it means. But for Hawaiians to exist, this flag, just really quickly on this is the Kanaka Maoli. This is not the official Hawaiian flag, but this is a flag that represents. It's often flown for our actions. This is the official Hawaiian flag of the sovereign country of Hawaii. This flag has why does it have it? I don't put it up because there's no education system in the West, and I don't want to take a lot of time to educate diseducated Westerners with PhDs and without what that flag means. That flag does not mean that we love Britain necessarily. That means the reason why it has a Union Jack in it is because we were allegiant to Britain is a trade-off under the dire material and political circumstances of 1800s Earth, where if you weren't allegiant to one of these kingdoms, and the Hawaiians had studied, because we could read, right? We had the highest literacy rate in the world. We understood that entire continents were being wiped out. Africa, Turtle Island, right? Americans just gunning down and slitting the throats and on the backs of these are savages, and we are great Christian civilized people, right? Mission civilatrice, the word missionary comes from internal really exterminations and of Protestants. And now we're going to civilize all of these people and bring them Christian God and Western languages and Western ways and Western dress and Western everything and British or whichever flavor of Western barbarism they wanted to bring in, British, American, French, Spanish. So the Hawaiians read and they understood that this was what was going to happen. So in order to project, to become a facsimile or to project external civilization, the nonsensical word doesn't mean anything. It's just a ridiculous word in English. What the fuck does this mean? Right? The civilized countries are the ones that are not the civilized countries do not commit genocide. That's like literally written in the definition of genocide in the UN. It's nonsensical. Who are the civilized countries? The US, UK, France, Canada. And that's a nonsensical word. But anyways, to project as though we were civilized, we had to have things that people that looked like kings with eyepieces. Kalakaua wore very steampunk royalty-looking clothing often, because that was the fashion of the times. They had beards that looked like it, and you had to call yourself a king. But Kalakaua and Kamehameha, they were constitutional ali'i. Ali'i is a Hawaiian word that doesn't. Its closest meaning is steward, but anyway, this is a long. Every one of these things, I can't stop and explain every single one. It's difficult because, anyways, there's a lot of diseducation out there. But anyway, Kamehameha III, books of law, newspapers. But it was elected leader, and we also had full universal health care, and there were no homeless people. So in practice, de facto, what it actually was somebody who represented. And if you weren't following, there were ali'i who were hung and they were removed because they were treasonous to their own country. They were removed. This didn't happen. If the leaders of Britain, for example, didn't do for the masses of the poor people in the United Kingdom or in Britain, they didn't just the people didn't just like remove, because of corruption, a British monarch generally. So this is very different. Anyway, so Kamehameha III had books of law, newspapers, agricultural products, Bibles, textbooks, other examples of civilized accomplishments, because you got to have lots of little things in books, right? You have pieces of paper stacked in these codices. We call them books. If you don't have these things, that means we can come into your country and we civilized people can slaughter you all and enslave you all and destroy your land. What does civilized even mean? What does this mean? Anyway, accomplishments were exhibited. European visitors to the Paris Exposition were, for the most part, ruled by monarchs, actual monarchs, and they're only the highborn, right, of the Windsor Palace, of the descendants of the Merovingian, right, the Germanic Himmelschlossen, the elite royalty, right, aristocratic, feudal, and capitalist elite were only ones who were privy to the excellent educations, right, in Europe. Faced with their failed, and that's part of the inequality. It's, the feudalism, capitalism, all these systems, they're about continued, poverty and diseducation of the masses. To this day, only the CIA knows that, who was genocided and who isn't, and then they knew that the babies in the incubators were thrown out was a lie before everyone was lied into these wars, right? Right? Because everyone else is not privy. If you're not Mike Pompeo or, Mr. Bezos's niece, you're not privy to an excellent education. You have to go to your normal schools where they teach you nonsense and you get to read the media that the think tanks in DC write so that you can all start more wars and join AUKUS, right? So anyways, so all of these so-called civilized people, right, diseducated the masses. I would argue it's not really that Hawaiians were, and they said in this time, this island, Hawaii, with the highest literacy rate in the world, right? And we were bilingual, trilingual. We could read in multiple languages. We had embassies across the earth, right? From Asia, Africa, what was then Persia. We were at one of the Swiss diplomats. I had a Swiss diplomat. One of the few honest people that I had teach me about Hawaii was like, I really respect the Hawaiians because they were the greatest diplomats on earth. I don't know how they survived as a non-white country in the 1800s with full parity in the family of nations, when so many others were just annihilated. And they actually were, the West was forced to recognize, right, the advanced indigenous Hawaiian culture, people, and country, because it was just too embarrassing. How could these people, this island, this is what the Europeans said in this time, this island is ahead in literacy, and the enlightened countries of Europe are behind it. The word enlightened, stolen from Asia, in fact, right? It's a word bar. The West has never been enlightened. It's a joke. You're plagiarists of indigenous peoples of Turtle Island and of Asia, and you never followed any of this, including the U.S. Constitution. But anyways, so this island, Hawaii, is ahead in literacy. How this is possible? I would argue it's not because there's something special in the DNA of Hawaiians, that's some racist eugenicist nonsense, but that's a normal thing for Westerners to think. It's not because there's something special in our food and the water. There's not like magical superhuman juice. We didn't get bit by radioactive spiders, like Mr. Tom Holland. We didn't, there's nothing really magical to us. What it is just practicing normal indigenous, mutual aid. What are you, anarchists? What, mutual aid based civil? What are you, Marxist Leninists? Not giving a labor value and being extracted, and the educational access being unequal to capital or to the ruling class, right? We just follow what normal human civilizations have for a long period of time, except for this brief error, this brief deleterious escapade called the colonial period. Sadly, not because something wrong with what the water in Europe or very bad mutant spiders in Europe, it's nothing wrong with the people, and it's nothing to do with your melanin count or something like that. It's just the ways of being in the culture that were very different, and mass violence and mass disinformation that is begotten from that based ways, right? And so Hawaii had the highest literacy rate. So this is a long. I'm so sorry that I'm kind of wrecking a lot of your stream, but I'm gonna finish this up. I swear I'm gonna finish this up in the next 5 minutes. Okay. Kalakaua, one of our leaders, had invented a subaquatic vehicle when Jules Verne was still dreaming up 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. It was called the fish ram. Kalakaua, well, again, one of our stewards, masquerading as a king to be granted with the gift of not being destroyed, colonized, and illegally occupied. right? But our Ali was also a great engineer. Is what we might call a Renaissance man, a Renaissance person. Let's gendered about it. Fun fact: Hawaiian culture has full acceptance of LGBTQ plus. Mahu is a third, not exactly the same as a two-spirit, but it's a third gender that is very revered and very important and accepted as full people. And these concepts, these gender terms are very much there was no the concept of homophobia, the bigotry against LGBTQ plus people, hatred of people and denigration of people based on gender identity, gender binary, rigidly enforced gender binary and sexuality was not a thing. And Adam does research on this. Adam Kiave is also Mahu. But anyways, so the word, just as an example, the word that means stand up like a man is ku kanaka. That means stand up like a human in Hawaiian. Makua, the word for parent, is non-gendered. Most of the terms are like, generally you have many non-gendered terms. Aikane is just a normal accepted thing that you have same-sex romantic and aromantic relationships, and that's totally normal and fine. And there's not like prosecution and now when colonizers showed up, that changed, and they definitely said you have to denigrate and hurt and come after and threaten and kill people who are homosexual, people who people who didn't conform to strict gender binaries. And so anyway, so every Adam will often say, and this is true, every homophobic Hawaiian, I have these in my family, every homophobic Hawaiian is a successful instance of colonization, which is absolutely true. Very similar for a lot of Turtle Island people. But anyways, so Kalakaua invented was a leader and also an engineer. It's kind of like actually the CPC, the majority are scientists, technologists, and engineers. An advanced indigenous civilization that alleviated the greatest poverty alleviation on earth. They also have engineers and leaders. Like the word kahuna, very similar to the Mandarin of the meritocracy of our Asian relatives, right? Which is those who are very good at things, right? Experts at navigation, right? The kahuna of, like Maupi Ailug, right, would be like a kahuna, or Nainoa Thompson is a kahuna of navigation, right? An expert in a particular field, right? Your merit, right? Your ability. Not to give you extra wealth, but just you are capable of doing that thing. So we're going to allow you to teach and coach other people and educating them on how to do that particular thing, right? I think the anarchists, anarcho-socialists, anarcho-communists might call this, what we call it, justified temporary hierarchy, right? Something like that. So anyway, that's what Kalakaua was very expert in technology and also in language and in diplomacy, and that's part of why he was elected leader of Hawaii. Anyway, Hawaii was a living Wakanda, an indigenous future, more technologically, economically, and socio-politically advanced than any Western nation. There's actual images of this boat, by the way. In addition, there's also a torpedo-proof vessel. And again, that subaquatic vehicle, the fish ram, the submarine, these AUKUS submarines, right? These people are talking about. Hawaiians invented the blueprints for these like long before anything in like the submarine was rolled out in the Western world. There's another version of Hawaii where Hawaii has the most advanced navy, and I don't know. I'm gonna write an alternate history someday where Hawaii's advanced navy like pushes off any gunboat diplomacy, and then we start selling them to Asia. And opium wars go differently. Opium wars go differently, and the colonial period doesn't go as far as it did. Anyways, sovereign country of Hawaii also had black citizens before the U.S. Civil War. In fact, U.S. slaves that stepped onto Hawaiian soil were considered free. The Chinese were full citizens in Hawaii as the U.S. trained them up to build railroads in the West Coast with terrible lynching and racism against Asians, which you should be learning in this time of extreme attempts for the military-industrial complex and the Western barbarism to prolong its dying self through war against an Asian country, in particular China. But all of Asia ultimately is what they want to try. They're trying to manufacture consent for in their think tanks. So the war, the Asians were considered full citizens, right? The Chinese Exclusion Act. Canada was not the end of the Underground Railroad, by the way, because black people were segregated and there were horrible racism against them in Canada. In fact, we know to this day, Canada continues to commit genocide under the United Nations, in fact, that have officially sanctioned and declared that Canada is committing genocide and has a list of 200 things that it must do, but Canada has done less than like 10 things, in fact, to make that right. It's so the end of the Underground Railroad was actually, I would argue, Hawaii, in fact, where there's actual citizenship certificate in this thread that you can look at. Moses Allen, who was born in Africa as a citizen, and then was a slave in the United States, and then when Mr. Moses Allen arrived in Hawaii, was granted, and this is in English and Hawaiian, was granted citizenship. It's, as long as you're not here, again, as long as you're not here to destroy us, to attack us, to hurt us, right? You're not here to commit treason and try to, I don't know, do a color revolution, right? Something like that, right? Like what you're doing all over Asia and Africa and Central South America, right? As long as you're not here to like undo us, we will treat you with respect, and we will, and if you want to live here, so land back doesn't mean, okay, everybody let me see your skin, okay? Is it lighter than the cinnamon chai dolce latte? Oh, gotta go back to Europe. That's not what that means. That's not how it is in Hawaii. That's not how we at the Silver Spook Hui treat people, right? Holly is, Holly is like fairer than probably like a lot of people that I know. It's like, very, 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 what would be considered white, right? In a place like even Canada, but that's not the defining characteristic of who we are. That's not how we Hawaiians define Hawaiian. In fact, like, you could be Asian, you could be black, you could be of a fairer skin color. That's not a problem of being a member of Hawaii. But what you do have to do is be willing to participate in mutual respect, respect us, respect the people, respect the Aina, right? Respect the Aina, right? Follow our collective rules, right? Try to live in mutual respect from person to person, culture to culture, religion to religion, right? Nation to nation, people to Aina. Okay, don't try to take over it, right? And then build slave plantations of pineapples and sugar, and that's not Pono, and we can't have that. We don't want that, right? So that's the kind of stuff, and that's also what Vietnam, Cuba, and China and other indigenous advanced civilizations asked. American Johnson, another, you might know him, is a left YouTuber, right? And Luna is not going, EJ, you're going back to America because we're decolonized Vietnam, right? That's not how this works, right? You can be white in Vietnam. It's totally fine. Even EJ is looking to become a citizen, right? He's a former capitalist. By all rights, Vietnam should be like, get out of here, you filthy, dirty capitalist. You're selling these terrible Toyotas, ripping people off, selling all kind of, garbage. We're a capitalist corporate. No, they're not like that. They're like, hey, are you here to undo us? No. I mean, if you're here to try to undo us because you work for the NED, USAID, or some kind of CIA NGO neoliberal colonization scheme, then that's not cool. That's not cool, right? And then they go, well, I'm a Christian, and then you're persecuting me for my religion. Anyway, that's a long story. So that's what this is part of land back too, is that you can become a citizen of any skin color. You can arrive. Now, we don't immediately accept everybody, like just well, I love Hawaiians, and I'm here to do. We're gonna, okay. Well, I mean, let's go through a period, and we'll see. Let's see how things go, right? But it's acceptance of people. The racial equality that the U.S., Canada, and all these other places, even Europe, Muslims are overrepresented in prisons and poverty in France and Germany and all these parts of Europe. There's a lot of racism that's unaddressed in everywhere in the colonizer world, and for when you have mass organized violence and disinformation-based civilizations or barbarisms, I would argue, the racism is an outgrowth of a lot of this. What sometimes I think Marx called it primitive accumulation, right? But it's just like big mass murder, enslaving, and violence, and killing and stealing of stuff. And then you have to have perpetual racism to justify the ongoing lack of making right of these centuries of injustice and multi-hundred trillion dollar plunder called the colonial period, right? And then the racism is an outgrowth of that, because if we start treating those people like humans, well, what about the entire continent that we pillage? What about all the other people that we're not treating with mutual respect and dignity based on skin color, based on culture, based on language, based on Muslim religion in Europe, right? So anyways, the sovereign country of Hawaii, however, granted full citizenship to people of all these other cultures and places, right? And so that's very important. That's part of, I would argue that certificate is part of what land back would ultimately mean. It doesn't mean you can't come, you can't be here, or to kick everybody out. It's not ethno state. It's not all this nonsense, right? So that's important. An example of actual. So Hawaii was the actual example of equality, democracy existing in actual socialism without racial, not zero racial hatred, right? But not as a dominant way of being is interracial hatred and interreligious oppression. Greater technological advancement than any Western country in a POC nation. Hawaii put the U.S., the West, and Europe to shame. It blew their white man's burden out of the water, which was why we were illegally crushed and illegally occupied. So anyway, I'm not going to go through the entire thread. So the white man's burden, very important image, with Britain and Europe carrying India and Asia and China on its back from oppression, ignorance, barbarism, superstition, vice, brutality towards civilization, right? And then America carrying Cuba, Hawaii, Pacific Islands. It's Monroe Doctrine backyards, right? Central South America on its back towards civilization, right? Away from all of these things. So anyway, this is the nonsense of the entire, the Western world and the colonizer world, not necessarily, anyways. So there's pictures of Iolani Palace. You have Kalakaua there in front of Iolani Palace. Anyway, I'm just going through the thread. I'm sorry if you're not, I'm talking about the thread, and I'm going to finish it up right now. I've been going for so long. Hawaii's coup, backed by the U.S. gunboat diplomacy to smash a non-white countries building an actual anti-racist, socialist, thriving country, was the blueprint that would later be used on countless Asian, Pacific Islander, Latin American, African, and other countries across the world. So there's a picture of, the same coup, in Bolivia, they did a coup for lithium and then based Comrade Evo Morales of the MAS Indigenous Socialist, Marxist economists and socialist actual thinking, and also indigenous resistance, indigenous-led actual socialist leftist uprising, right? MAS, the movement towards socialism in Bolivia, undid, Western back for Elon. We'll coup whoever we want. Germany was taking 97% of the lithium, in fact, in their deal for their continued colonial process in 2019 and 2021. Where China offered 51%, by the way. Very important. That's win-win, right? And Germany is win-lose, right? 97% for German, $35 an hour gigafactory workers making batteries for Elon Musk's Teslas, right? And then and that's win-lose. And then 3% for Bolivians who couldn't pay their bills and were starving, and that they demanded evil do something about these Germans collaborating with Elon and the US and the AOS, right, and the CIA to undo Bolivia with fascist-backed coup under the Áñez administration, who, not with pepper balls, tear gas rounds, and rubber bullets, shot the indigenous protesters. They just massacred them with full metal jacket rounds, because that's what they do in the global South. They don't play gloves on like little playground colonialism, right? In America, they just shoot pepper balls, off camera. Now, off camera, when the white people aren't watching, they shoot you in the back of a alley in Chicago, in Honolulu, they just murder you. But when it's on camera, that's why you got a lot of cameras and everybody's looking at these civilized countries, right? Then they got to shoot you with pepper balls and rubber bullets. But in South America, nobody gives a crap. So these gun you down. Africa, they killed 6 million in 1997 in Congo, and they call the U.S.-backed regimes over there civilized. You could blow up Afghanistan, and that's okay, because very far away from Mr. Bezos' children, and there's no prying eyes, because we're going to censor all the media that comes out of that doesn't look like what we want it to. And so you can kill. The difference between Hawaii. So I'm very happy, close to Jeff Bezos's children that are frolicking, pretending to be some kind of hipster, fucking, no shade to the vegans, but I mean, there's some people that are, because I know this is the part of the, it's fine, but there's people who are, as Thoughtline correctly pointed out, imperialists, and they like to pretend that they're much better and changed and fixed and they live very close to where we are, like 20 miles. And they like going to ayahuasca ritual ceremonies, and they hug some Hawaiians, and they're the descendants of New York bankers and narco traffickers and billionaires. And they kind of live in this area. It's called Pahoa down there. And because they're so close to Hawaiians, and, Mr. Ellison owns too much land, he's got nice hotels, right? They don't want to shoot, Tomahawk missiles and Hellfire missiles and blow up right next to where their children are. They could be hit with like particles of like a Hawaiian's, a bone or something. What if you accidentally drive the property values down by blowing up brown people that are too close to your investment, right? This is the solution for you. You want to help Palestine. You want to help Afghanistan. Just have Larry Ellison build a private resort with nice golf courses and white sand beaches on the Gaza Strip, and nobody's gonna blow nothing up anymore. That's the difference. Gaza, you got to get a billionaire to have his children frolic around and hug all of your local brown people, and build a resort and have people sipping Mai Tais and pina coladas and fucking paddling canoes and feeling authentically changed, right, in Gaza. And then, but now Gaza just covered because they don't have any waste treatment facilities, so it's just covered in feces because America's backing the settler colonialism that's blowing all of their waste treatment facilities and water purification facilities up, and 97% of the water is unpotable, or it's basically it's anyways. So that's the difference between Hawaii and Palestine, Hawaii and Afghanistan. So I'm very thankful that I wasn't born in Iraq, and when it's a blue sky, I don't have to worry about being exterminated and picking up my children with a mop or a sponge, which is what the people that are far away from the children of white rich colonizers have to deal with. So that's anyway. But these coups happen across the earth. They continue to happen. The U.S. is, U.S. and all of Europe is just a little puppet of the Western world. Ultimately, they're trying to get away from it, but You still got too much NATO up inside of you, and you're all just backing imperialism. And all these SOCDEM countries are a lot of them are doing very well because of what the U.S. continues to do to pillage the rest of the world, to suck all of the. That's the difference between Vietnam, China, Cuba, Laos. They're not. They're participating in mutual win-win cooperation internationally across the world from nation to nation, whereas a lot of Europe continues to benefit from, again, like I already discussed, French francophone tax from Africa, the continued sucking of wealth into Europe to back it's doing better internally, foreign policy, right? It's a little. Germany is just a place for U.S. to put all of its 35,000 troops and its nuclear missiles aimed at Moscow, and to project power against the Asian growing supercontinent that Brzezinski discussed in the Grand Chessboard. So, anyways. Okay, so global coups. I'm so sorry. I'm messing this whole stream up. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
Okay, finally, this is the last one. To push the country back into poverty, right? So why do they do these coups? Why are they sanctioning $130 billion of Cuba? Why is the United States stopping with ships, embargo, sanctions, and hybrid warfare $130 billion of economic development that could build roads, schools, houses? Cuba is very advanced. They have a longer life expectancy despite $130 billion of sanctions and embargoes upon them. Yet they have a longer life expectancy than the United States does today. Yet they have better access to healthcare than the United States does today. They have less per capita homelessness than the United States does today. Vietnam, 40 times less per capita malnutrition deaths than the United States does today, despite them being bombed into the Stone Age and advanced indigenous Asian civilization, the Vietnamese, who are incredibly kicked all of your Western barbarous butts out of there with less technology and less wealth, and then also have better 1,000 less per capita homelessness. California, 3,800 per million homeless people per capita. Vietnam, Hanoi, very big city. That's a place that's being generous. That's like a big city where it was not perfect. They have 4 billionaires there. They have some inequality there that they're trying to deal with under the current material conditions of ongoing siege socialism and global imperialism. Four homeless per, I think it's 4 homeless per million. Looked it up in Hanoi. So again, even with the trade-offs that they have to make, they're still doing way better. Healthcare access, COVID-19 deaths, China, 200 to 600 times less. Economy and people's health protected, right? But that's why they're under siege, right? That's why Hawaii was overthrown with U.S. gunboat diplomacy, and there's images of Hawaii was just a blueprint for what the U.S. would do, and with the Western world, the colonial world would try to do to countless other countries, to Bolivia, try to do to Cuba. Successfully did in a lot of ways to Colombia, Argentina, to countless African countries, doing all over. It's not the same thing, but part of what it's doing is what it's doing to the 7 countless Asian countries like Afghanistan and Western Asian and Muslim countries, especially Muslim countries. But that's all of this blueprint that Hawaii was part of. Not Hawaii wasn't the first one that this had ever been done to, but Hawaii was. We cannot allow an indigenous advanced civilization to practice actual socialism, actual racial economic equality, right? And becoming technologically advanced, more literate, mass educating people, very high education rates, very good educations in places that become socialist, and also electrification. I believe it was Lenin who said electrification is a requirement for socialism, for liberation of the people, right? Because that is what allows access to people to the technological and economic concrete development, right? Concrete development, right? This has never happened under the colonizer. They're still not doing this in Europe and America, right? Concrete development that allows people to get educated and then build technological development that allows them to alleviate poverty. It's not that we don't want any wealth. We do want wealth, but we want moderate wealth for all of society. Shakang Shahui, right? We don't want exorbitant wealth, right? But we want more, better livelihoods. We want electricity. Like toilets are nice, dying of cholera and typhus and syphilis. This is not, typhus, cholera, dying of treatable illnesses is not nice, right? And that's not, nobody wants that, right? That's part of this wax museum Indian version of indigenous people that a lot of white people Westerners like to idealize, infantilize this noble savage mythology. That's not who Hawaii was. That's not who indigenous civilizations like the 56 ethnic regions of China are. That's not who the Vietnamese were and are. Not that we're perfect, but we have always had technology. The greatest and most advanced civilizations in Africa thousands of years ago, advanced technology. And the pyramids and all of these great cities, the great cities, huge urban centers in Turtle Island. These were technologically advanced civilizations. They didn't have necessarily electricity at that time, but they had a lot of advanced technologies. China had more advanced technologies than anything in Europe, right? And so that's who we were. And why were we that? We were advanced technologically, socially, politically, not perfect, but we were more advanced because we practiced what socialism, Marxist, Leninism, these ideologies, talk about, but they haven't implemented in the West, right? Which is mutual respect between people to person, nation to nation, language to language, and people to Aina. And so, anyways, finally, that's why Hawaii was pushed back into poverty. We were diseducated. Our history was obliterated. This is why you're probably hearing this for the first time if you listen to a Silver Spook stream. They de-developed our infrastructure and they plundered our resources and cheap labor in Hawaii. The Hawaiian language was banned when Hawaii illegally occupied us. Again, the UN elaborates this. The 1892 at gunpoint overthrow in collaboration between white Calvinist, Puritan, missionary descendants, the Dole Pineapple, Sanford and Bob Dole, who worked together to destroy Hawaii, denationalize us, banned our language, banned our culture, drove us into poverty. We had a universal healthcare system, the first universal healthcare system on earth that I know of, as far as I can surmise. 1860s Queen's medical system, right? The Western first universal healthcare system was Prussia, Otto von Bismarck, 20 years later. So that system, the first universal healthcare system, was defunded, destroyed by the United States intentionally that's one vector of the genocide of the Native Hawaiians by the United States under international law, is to make it whole, to deprive of the conditions of life that are calculated to bring about the physical destruction of a group in whole or in part, which that falls under it. On top of denationalization, the destruction, replacing of symbols of our Hawaiian flag, of our Hawaiian language, right? That banning of the language of Hawaiian. My mother had her knuckles shattered for speaking Hawaiian when she was growing up. My father had classmates that were thrown out of buildings, 2-story buildings for speaking Hawaiian. That was a normal thing to happen. The things that happened in Canadian residential schools, the U.S. did this, and Hawaii was not a exception to that. And so anyway, that's one. Now today, we highest literacy rate in the world to 1 in 6 Hawaiians who can't read, or 1 in 6 Hawaiian residents that struggle to read. Native Hawaiians, the lowest life expectancy of every ethnic group, as far as I know. Black, the last time I looked it up, Black, Asian, Hispanic, Hawaiians, the lowest life expectancy. We had one of the longest life expectancies, according to Captain Cook, James Cook. Now we have the lowest in the United States. We live in ghettos. We live in everything that you see in Neofeud now. But that U.S. and Western imperialism days are numbered. Hawaiians are learning our language, our Olelo. That's why we succeeded on Mauna Kea, to push back against multi-billion-dollar capitalist corporate colonial projects like the 30-meter telescope, which I'm fine with telescopes. I teach STEM. I'm a science fiction writer, right? But also we would like to do science with mutual respect for people and cultures and respect the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, right? This narrative of those people are backward savages, those brown people, but we are advanced, civilized scientists, and that's why we're doing these things, and they have to just let us do it. That literally was a justification for colonialism. So on Mauna Kea, the success is a beginning of a global success of, I would argue, rising Asian Pacific Islander. The greatest successes right now happen to be in Asia, but I believe one day there will be a global Silk Road, and there will be a global, which is a mutual trade network of win-win trade and cooperation, not win-lose, right? Gunboat and colonizer plunder, right? And one day we will get back to this, but we have to do a lot more education to unlearn a lot of this nonsense and learn things about our relatives and our other peoples across the earth that don't get heard not nearly enough in the global north and the global west. And so we are building the prosperous, advanced, yet culturally Hawaiian world in solidarity with the rest of the global south and allies. I'm so sorry that I just kind of I'm so sorry.
It's Great. That was great. That was honestly like so much packed into one question. That was just one question. And it's been an hour and 20 minutes, I think. But I think you covered so much of what I even wanted to talk about further on. And it was incredibly educational. I think that most people watching this probably had no idea that Hawaii had such a high literacy rate, had, universal healthcare, had electricity before the White House. I mean, these are things that I never learned. And I do have a PhD from one of these institutions that you call an Emperor Palpatine training facility, I had never heard that.
I apologize, by the way. I'm not saying that everybody.
I agree.
No,
I think that's hilarious, and it's well said. I mean, until I listened to your stream, I didn't know about any of that. And I think that everything you were talking about the values, the difference between, Hawaiian and different indigenous values and worldviews versus the Western one that is so full of separation, right? I talk a lot about how we're not going to get anywhere. We're not going to build a sustainable future if we don't understand reciprocity, and if that isn't actually baked into our worldview with respect to each other, but also the land and the environments that we form part of. But okay, so I do want to move on to Neofeud, but I wanted to, I know a lot of people in the chat are asking about solar punk and things like that. So I'm thinking I might be able to kind of combine a few questions and ask you to talk about land back and decolonization and kind of indigenous futurism, right? Because I know that I guess a bit of spoiler for Neofeud 2, you had a picture up of a really amazing kind of solar punk vision that we have on the title card for the stream, and you were talking about how land back decolonization, it's really a precondition for that kind of future, and that indigenous societies, Hawaiian society is that kind of solar punk future, right? I hear a lot that there's a kind of a Marxist position that we needed to go through capitalism first before we could get to socialism. That sometimes I think legitimizes colonialism in some ways, whereas as you said, there were societies like this that were thriving and were much closer to the kind of socialist solar punk kind of ideal that we're striving for today, right? That we probably, we didn't need to go through colonialism in order to now come back around. But anyway, I've just thrown a lot at you, but maybe talk a bit about that and kind of this idea of indigenous futurism and what land back, could mean and could look like in Hawaii and elsewhere.
Yeah. So, yeah, again, I deeply apologize. Like I know we had like 20 questions. I'm like, oh my goodness, don't go off for an hour per question. We're gonna be here for 26 hours. Anyway, but yeah, I hope that some of the questions have been touched on in that.
Yeah.
Her 20-minute answer. So
they definitely have. Yeah.
I'm trying to hit on a lot of things that you asked, but line back. So yeah. I talked a little bit about what that line back kind of means in the, in particular, people asking about. Like, does that mean that, everybody that isn't, are not related to, for example, Turtle Island Cherokee, Anishinaabe, et cetera, they all have to just go home to Europe, and like, again, like I can't, and this is important too, which is I cannot speak for every indigenous person. And in fact, I can't claim I'm not an authoritative, and I will never. If you ever find Silver Spook going, hey, everybody, buy my book, $72 on Amazon, How to Build a Fully Automated Luxury Indigenous Socialist Earth, then you gotta get the guillotine or something out, if I start treating Holly like an employee or something like that, and other people, and I start taking vast quantities of profit from Neofeud, you gotta something's happened. So that's not what it's about, right? Because the capitalist structure, right, itself, right, and that land back involves, right, to my mind, again, so when I said Hawaiians for Hawaiian land back means like not having domination of land and exploitation of land and of people, right? It's just to me, it means being pono, it means being righteous, it means being just, right? Which, I like bringing in, our representatives of the truth saying, sadly, there are a lot of people who said a lot of very true things, like Richard Wolff, Michael Hudson, economist, the advisor to China, in fact. But Richard Wolff is one who has really gone on the cooperative structure, right? The democratization of the inequitable, right? The not pono, unjust organization of the capitalist business, right? And I do agree that it is correct. We need more you can call a thing a democracy, right? You just throw the word democracy on a thing, even on a country, right? I would the workplaces and the governments of the West, neither are democratic. They call, look, I call it, this is what they have in the West and all of the little puppet dictatorships. If they can't get a dictatorship, they have a rigged democracy like the United States has. It's a plutocracy. It's a star-spangled, dead war criminal, like, I don't know, the Abraham Lincoln Elementary School. You go into one of these war criminals because that guy wanted to, guess what? He wanted to remove all the black people. He wanted to sell the black slaves back to Africa. That was the North's position. But you go into one of these schools, right? And then you fill in these little bubble coloring book. I call it plutocracy with coloring book characteristics. And then you say, look, we voted for Biden. Now we're different. Now we're so different. We're definitely not blowing up the world, giving billions of dollars to the richest people. We're not racist anymore. No, nothing really can change under these so-called Western liberal democracies. Not really, not ultimately, not the highest and most important, as in a Leninist sense, from the commanding heights, right? So Landback is about, as in the way that we organize business, right? So the Silver Spook Hui, as a worker-owned cooperative, right? We don't have bosses, we don't have landlords, right? So just in a really material example. So like, for example, if the way that we can never organize it perfectly because we have in a capitalist system. I got to stream through blood mineral soaked made cameras, and I got to use a very large surveillance capitalist big tech platform because that's what we got right now. But we hope we're getting better. But under the current circumstances of Silver Spook Hui, when we sell games, right? I would argue this is indigenous game company Landback, right? Which is, again, if I design artificial intelligence cyberpunk adventure games, it doesn't mean I'm not indigenous anymore. Very important, right? It doesn't mean right? I'm an advanced technologically advanced video game cyberpunk making, that's why I love Reservation Dogs. Like, we can make jokes about William Gibson and Blade Runner, and we can have Reservoir Dogs riffs, just like anybody else. And that doesn't mean we're not indigenous anymore. And that's also an indigenous show, right? And so I can make these games, and when the games are sold, right, like Neofeud, that are rips on all of these things I'm talking about, but within more game characteristics and more humor and less direct the way I'm doing it right now, is I can sell these games, and then we sell the games, and when the games make revenue, the revenue split specifically is like exactly like whatever hours you put in. So if you put, it doesn't matter. So we don't say, because you're a QA tester, like for example, Cyberpunk 2077 people, right, who are employees who are working their butts off, sick. I worked crunch for AAA game companies. It's horrible. 100 hours a week, 7 days a week, coming in, it's like that. It's like 7 hours. It's like 10 hours a day, 7 days a week kind of things, right? You want a weekend? Weekends don't exist anymore. You want to visit your child's ballet recital, your birthday party? There's no ballet anymore. There's only working at a game company for the next 6 months. So the game comes out, then you're fired. No severance, just like Telltale Games, right? In Europe, I believe it was terrible. So that maltreatment of the QA testers, the programmers, the writers, the musicians, right? Is there's a lot of critique about this from Commander Stephanie Sterling, people who criticize the AAA game industry. There's like this very important because it's a very destructive force. And so what we try to do as a Silver Spook Hui is try to make sure that with the revenue that comes in is evenly split according to the amount of time you worked in. We don't judge if you're a programmer like I did. Now, I did the majority of the work on Neofeud, but going forward, that's the way that I try to organize it. And I could, this is another thing very important. At the Silver Spook Hui, we will screw up. We can, and we definitely will screw up. And we have to be able to do ongoing, what is the term in the, ongoing cultural revolution or ongoing interrogation, ongoing internal critique, right? Like, there's times where I just didn't give enough respect to Holly's very important care work. The care work is as important. In fact, I would argue at least, if not more important than any work that I could possibly do. The man's work of making programming or building buildings or whatever, the care work is as important. So Holly's mod work, as well as my partner, who is a white Canadian and is now an ongoing person in Hawaii. Hawaiian national might be the term. Somebody who's in Hawaii, but is in the ongoing process of not like, we can't just say Holly's Hawaiian, but Holly is a member of the Silver Spook Cooperative. Holly does a lot of very important care work and a lot of moderation work, which is very important that I need in the streams, especially now with a lot of these bad faith actors all over the place, and Holly also did voice acting work. Holly voice acts, for instance, Sibyl in Neofeud, and so all of that work is valued, and for people that are outside of the cooperative right now, like everybody is paid. If the game makes, for example, $1,000, right? Then in a month, let's say that you sell like 100. I don't know, 100. We're not making tons of money. The game in total has made like $42,000 over 4 years. This is not. We're not nearly making enough that we need. It'd be poverty for a family of 4, right? So, but we do have Patreon. We have other things that supplement, and we have like, things that help us. And the Big Island of Hawaii helps us out a lot. It's not like Oahu. It's much more Hawaiian values centered, and so we can make it work. Still, however, we as many sales as possible. I say everything we do is supported by the sales of the game, but when the revenue comes in, it does go out exactly according to the amount of hours. So if you're a voice actor, you put in 30 hours or 40 hours, and the total hours is like, I put in like 2.5 years, right? So if you're a QA tester, you put in like one person put in like, QA. We did have a QA person that put in like, basically 2 weeks, a month or so. And so like in perpetuity, if the game makes $1,000, they will get, like, if they put in 1% of the work, then you get 1%. If you put in 10% of the work, if the game makes $1,000, you get $100 that month. That'll be a lot, that'll be a good amount of money. If the game makes, $100,000 and you put in 10% of the work, you get $1,000. If in a future game, if you put in 30% of the work, like let's say an artist did 30, let's say I'm not doing all the art or something, I'm not, like, because I did that for Neofeud, right? You put in like 30% of the hours, the total hours, then if the game makes $100,000, you get $30,000, right? If it makes $1 million, you get $300,000. Now, we're not getting anywhere close to that. And like as cooperatives become larger, like more specific hash out details get involved, and you have to really work out, and legal structures get involved, or I know I said, like, there's only lawfare in the Western world, and we have to make do with what we have. But you have to kind of hash these things out, just because if people who are newer to the cooperative, it's very important. I think you coined this phrase, "move at the speed of trust." Was it you? I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, it was. I read that from Adrienne Marie Brown, so it wasn't me, but I repeated that in a video.
Yeah. So I think that's very important, actually, because it's like it's not because we distrust everyone, but like we want to make sure that we're moving in a way that, like, we don't break our internal successes in actual equitable relationships by growing too fast. I was just watching this Lula Rich on LuLaRoe multi-level marketing stuff, and it's like, not that they weren't really good to begin with, but they grew super fast, and some people made a lot of money and everything exploded, right? But that can also be a problem even for worker cooperatives or any other kind of more equitable ways of organizing work. And so anyway, oh my goodness. Okay, I gotta stop. But that's, so land back means equitable ways of organizing work. What we try to do, and we don't charge rent. So like we had a college professor who was making like 50% of college professors in the United States were food insecure in 2019 before COVID-19. Disastrous, horrific, abusive, unacceptable. And we had somebody who would, like, I'm living in a trailer. I teach full time at a college, and I have to like beg my students, who are like often richer than me, for like meal tickets so I can get some lasagna to not starve. And I was like, this is like a white person working at an accredited, just a white, not a non-BIPOC person with like good, like pretty well off actually family, but working at an accredited college. You're a professor at a college, and you're homeless, and you're like food insecure. What is wrong with this country? And so we said, you need housing. So this is also land back. This is what it means to have land back. It means we do not deny people, no matter their skin color, no matter their, where they're from. We don't deny people housing. We don't deny people their basic necessities. We don't allow people to be hungry, right? This is what Vietnam, they have, the People's Liberation is out there to make sure every single last person, they'll march through treacherous mountainsides where there's no water, there's no the cliff sides that you could die. People did die. Alleviating poverty. We will not allow anyone to be hungry, homeless, without healthcare and their basic needs. Period. However we do it under the current circumstances, we will make it work. And so that's why that was my kuleana, was to house that person, right? Now, I don't want to put anyone on blast. It's not what this is about. I don't care about no drama. But there were disagreements, and there's a little too much white savior mentalities in it. But I mean, that is beyond. There's a homeless person. They need housing. We don't charge rent. we have a large house here with many graces and many gifts of much aloha went into getting us this place that we have, the Silver Spook compound. We have like 4 bedrooms. We have like a separate 22 by 25 foot studio, like a separate house over here. That's this empty space. You need a place. You go live there, and you figure out what you can do to alleviate other people's homelessness and foodlessness and impoverishment. That, and so it's restructuring the way that we deal with the land and how people are housed on the land, how the land is utilized to, grow again. Like I said, whether that's a kalo farm, or we grow kalo. This is Hawaiian staple food that what poi and lalo is made from, right? Now we're not professional farmers by any stretch. A quarter acre is not enough to grow enough to feed us. So we have to also respect there's this idea we're just all going to go into this communal village and we're just going to grow enough food and feed each other, and that there's nothing wrong with that. But to indigenous people, yes, had great advanced ways of doing ecological food security. Hawaiians had the ahupua'a system from the mountain to the sea with water that was terraced and maximizing the usage. Pre-contact for fish ponds, lo'i, that we could work 3 hours a day, feed everybody, and then be surfing and relating and doing all the important educational work. That's part of capitalism. You lock you in with all your time and mental space into blowing it into your office and into your work and into your job, so you have no space to get educated and socialize and do the important human interconnected meetings to build this unified working class, unified country, unified people. And so anyways, so land back means freeing up people from the oppressed, the time and mental space, neural RAM and ROM in cyberpunk terms, consumption that capitalism drains you of, right? It's really giving you back your time by saying you don't have to worry about your rent, you don't have to worry about your food, you don't have to worry about your basic material needs, but you have to please. What we ask you at the Silver Spook Cooperatives, please help us to at least be honest and accept that this is an illegal occupied country, please, right? You disrespect Native Hawaiians and the truth of our current situation and imperialism and everyone else, then we're gonna have problems. But please use the energy and the time that we give you back through Land Back, right, as we see it, to try to liberate other people from their oppressive capitalist overwork and just destructive systems, right? In whatever way that is, whether that's trying to feed other people, trying to start your own cooperative farm with 30 acres, right? With technologically advanced machines, because Hawaiians Hamakua Farms is not hand growing everything. They use tractors, they use modern machinery, because that's a way that we can grow food and do it in the most sustainable way possible, trying not to do big ag factory farming and destroy the soil. But we need to also respect. We use technology in the most equitable for people and for nature, ways that we can. So that's also what Land Back means. So people go, Grimes is over there going like, I don't want to be a communist because farming so not a vibe. So not a vibe. So anyway, so that's a long explanation for. So anyway, so that's and Land Back for Hawaii. For Hawaii specifically, it means the United States respecting the United Nations High Commissioner on Human Rights. Just follow international law, number one. Okay, that's what please follow international law and stop illegally occupying Hawaii, and withdraw the U.S. military troops. Stop poisoning our water with 180 million gallons of spilling fossil fuel in my parents' aquifer. Please stop bombing Pohakalua, dropping radioactive depleted uranium into Waianae. Okay, it means just follow number one, follow international law, allow Hawaiians to have self-determination and govern ourselves as and just follow rules and stuff, number one. Number two, it means it's unclear exactly how this works. I can't tell, like, it is not a thing. Again, I don't have all the answers for everybody, but what we do know is that we have to work towards equitable relationships from person to person. People, as I said, in the workplaces and in the government, and the current Hawaii's government is not representative. It's the government that is killing us and mass imprisoning us, like I said earlier, right? So Hawaii had elections, and we will have elections again, but not just elections. The economic changes that need to happen, right? And again, like Vietnam and China, there was violence, but a lot of times what's missed in the revolutions that got to them to the place where they are now. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. And a lot of work that went into it wasn't necessarily violent. But there's these outbursts at one point when the landlords say, no, I don't want to give it up. I'm not going to give up all of my billions and billions of dollars in all this land. Well, I mean, you're going to have to, we don't want to do violence. However, and China is very good about this, right? Like nobody, China didn't blow up 1 million Americans to get Meng Wanzhou back. We said they were economic, but they were economic. Like, we're not going to trade X and Y and Z. We're not going to do X and Y and Z. When Hong Kong was gotten back, China didn't like blow up Hong Kong to take it back. They didn't fight a war. They said, please, Britain, for your own economic interests, because we will cut off X and Y and Z trade unless you allow Hong Kong to not be a British colony anymore. And so I think part of what it looks like for land back is, but again, how exactly we get that is a very complicated question. I can't answer in this stream, and I don't know enough to. You have to be in the place you are in, organizing where you are at, to really be able to answer these very complex and historical, entangled questions. But ultimately, what we do want is land back will ultimately help the hundreds of thousands, if not really, it's millions. Ultimately, 60 to 90% of people in the United States, according to actual like Chinese like poverty alleviation, are in poverty. Homeless. Even if you have a house, but if you're 20 people living in a house like everybody in my Valley of Kalihi in Oahu is, that's not dignified housing. That's not acceptable housing. The water's not clean. That's not acceptable, right? So land back means getting everybody appropriately housed. It means no matter who they are, what's the skin color, no matter what their culture, everybody getting their basic material needs met. Undoing the destructive, lawsuit. Any indigenous, mostly, every indigenous person that I know that is working in land back, that is occupying those pipelines right now, that are doing 25% of reduction on carbon emissions, despite being less than 10% of the population, right? Like Indigenous Environmental Network at the Line 3, that the Democrats are lying about. We're going to stop doing fossil fuel, but they're not. And the indigenous people are on the front lines. And what they don't want is, we want to kick all the white people out and just have giant capitalist indigenous run Turtle Island. That's not what we want. And I can't say like absolutely zero indigenous people, but that's not what we're seeing materially at the largest scale on the ground. That's not what we want. And we're going to disagree. Well, we should go about land back in this way. And I might have a different disagreement. I might say, well, it means more like this. I want to do technologically advanced cooperative game companies. And I want to build solar panels and have an advanced Anishinaabe city that has, high-speed rail that we manufacture with the resources that we're equitably trading with Bolivia and China. And that's what we want to do as part of our land back. Or this other place, well, we don't want a lot of industry. We want to have like regenerative eco forests and this kind of thing. And that's a thing that the indigenous people in that place, along with the other people who are participating in land back, can collectively decide in self-determination with respect to their other neighboring parts of the Federation of Indigenous Turtle Island that isn't U.S. and Canada anymore. And so anyway, that's a long, I think I covered everything.
Yeah, no, that was fantastic. I really liked how you explained that. Obviously, not to speak for all Indigenous people or anything like that. But the Indigenous colleagues that I've always, worked with, have described it basically as learning to live, like settlers learning to live in the Indigenous nations that they actually inhabit. Because there are, constitutions and laws and everything that are already governing these territories, and treaties that are supposed to be governing these territories, and they're just not being followed. And so, it's just really cynical when you see a lot of people, especially some white leftists recently, comparing land back or things like that to like white genocide or whatever. It's just completely cynical. And completely missing the mark, right? And as you said, as you described all of the Hawaiian values and the way that Hawaiian society was organized, using advanced technology, but using it through the lens of those values and how much more productive that was for everyone and for the land, right? Like that's the kind of future that we could have if we took land back seriously. You mentioned that Indigenous-led resistance is just, there's just a report came out that said that Indigenous-led resistance has cut 25% of the Canadian and US emissions annually for the past several years. So, yeah, I think, you know, a great thing that you can do locally is get involved with Indigenous land defense. You know, if there are nations around you that are struggling to protect their land from development and whatnot, get involved in that, right? Because this is, you know, it's a key issue that we're fighting for. So anyway, just thank you so much for all of that. So I think we've kind of covered a lot that I wanted to talk about in the first section. So maybe let's get into Neofeud now and more into, you know, the game and the themes. So we're going to start with a spoiler-free section. So if you haven't actually played the game, never fear, we won't give you spoilers in this section. We'll have a spoiler full section later on, and we'll announce that. And then if you don't want to get spoilers, you can maybe pause at that point, go get the game, play the game, and then come back and hear the analysis. But yeah, let's just start with kind of high level, no spoiler section. So you mentioned a bit about the fact that it was inspired by your own personal experiences working as a social worker, but I guess could you go a bit more into, you know, what inspired you to make this game, and also how it relates to Hawaii and what the main characters like Carl Carbon and Protege are meant to represent?
Yeah, so with Neofeud, it's a game that's like I said, it's about my personal experiences, and universal experiences, but also in a very personal way, because I worked in social services. Try to be a little more clear, because I was a STEM teacher and competency-based diploma program worker, basically. So I was trying to help kids who had dropped out of college, dropped out of high school or school, which in the United States, if you to drop out, you basically have to sign away your right to get a free education from the U.S. right once you drop out. And so it's just another very messed up thing that, you know, they kind of go, oh, you're not having a fun time in school, here, sign this thing and drop out, to make the school look like it's great. Oh, look at that, all our, you know, disproportionately BIPOC kids are all out, and now looks like our grades went up, so the superintendent gets a raise. It's just so messed up. And like everything else, so I was a competency-based diploma program instructor, basically teaching. It's for kids who had, for some reason, not succeeded or had dropped out. Some of them is 16 to 21-year-olds, and if they wanted to get a diploma, high school diploma, and also get it's like basically life skills training. So it's not algebra. You don't have to get your chemistry too and your AP English and all this stuff. It's just like occupational knowledge, right? How to show up to work and just, like Protege, Carl Carbon and Protege's relationship is like me and all of my students. I had STEM kids, science, technology, engineering, math, and I also had these high school students. Protege was like, he's like an amalgamation of I would have a class of 30 Proteges, if you can imagine that. And they'd be like, Mr. Chris, they wouldn't be saying Carl Carbon, you Carl Carbon. They'd be saying, Mr. Chris, can I swear on this, by the way?
Yeah, go ahead.
Motherfucker, what the hell are you talking about? I gotta learn constitutional law. I can go, jack Audis. I can make $30,000 a month and this and that. I can sell this and that. I'm a baller. I'm a baller. They're all listening to too much reactionary versions of Kanye and sometimes Ice Cube, but they're guided by, and that's part of the narrative, this reactionary co-opting of kind of revolutionary. The Kwame Ture and the Malcolm and what Public Enemy was doing, it's kind of like, and then neoliberalism is like, well, how about if we just have a bunch of rappers that teach you that if you just make a lot of money and be a good capitalist, but hip hop artist, and get everyone else around you to join that, then we'll give you a good, and it's like the Protege character is very much misled. And a lot of kids in my classes were deeply misled by these figures, and a lot of them didn't have parents. Dad's in prison, mom's the mine on a terrible drug. Not their fault. This is part of the poverty, the greatest violence of poverty, that they're doing violence to each other, and trying to stop these kids from hurting themselves and their family, and going I'm gonna be the best rapper in the world. I'm gonna shoot hoops in the NBA. I'm gonna be making millions. I'm like, you're probably statistically gonna wind up in a prison industrial complex. Actually, that's what the Hawaii is the #1 place for kids going into prison for the rest of their life or dying. And I had students, sadly, that were shot by police or by rival gangs. There were some kids were wannabe Bloods and Crips, but there were actual, gang members, and trying to get them out of that life. It's like, it's like freedom riders and all these, Hillary Swank goes into the inner city and saves the kids in the ghettos, and it's like, oh, it's so moving and it's so good. It's a lot harder than that. Let me tell you, I spent 3 years with one 7-foot-tall Samoan kid trying to teach him how to like carry the two. I mean, not because he was like dumb, but like Mr. Chris, his fingers were like huge. Dwayne The Rock Johnson. This is like the guy that like ate Dwayne The Rock Johnson. He was the son of a chief from Samoa. And he was like, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, by the way, was in that ghetto that I was from. Kalihi Palama, his father. They wrestled in the community center, and Dwayne Johnson, in fact, said he used to steal Snickers and Twix from the 7-Eleven that I used to walk past because I had no car. To get Kalihi Palama. It's basically it's like the Chinatown, Hawaiian and Asian and Pacific Islander ghetto area of Honolulu. But anyway, so that life down there, and they were being like misled by, and so the job of this in Neofeud, Carl Carbon and Protege's relationship is my relationship with the kids, right? Of like, hey, let's take them colors off, stop trying to aspire to this kind of reactionary and unreachable. You're 1 out of a million of you is going to ever get out of here and ever become the great rich rapper or ball player or MTV's crib star talking about your oh, look at that, I got my Prada, I got my Gucci, I got my Dior. You're not going to be in that show, but that's why I like Reservation Dog, because it's very much about that, and the character, it's like, I'm like, that's like all my kids, but that's like thousands of miles away in another indigenous community, but it's like, that's like how it was though, and they're like being drawn in by like this anglerfish light of California's glitz and bling and ices and Hollywood and fame and money and all of this, look at Elon and look at all of these. Elon's the techno nerd cool person at the Met Gala with his girlfriend's melted down AR-15 into a sword. Do you want to be cool and sexy like all these people? There's different versions for everyone in America, right? It's like, come to America, come to California, be rich and famous, and all you all are going to be peasants under Neofeudalism. They don't tell you that. But anyway, so I'm trying to kids, don't get misled by this. This is destructive. I thought I was going to be a rock star in LA where I got a degree in music and I'm over here, and it's not going to work out. Like, I mean, for 1 in a million of you, it's going to work out, but you're going to hate yourself because you're going to work for the empire that destroyed you and your Philippines and your Samoa, and destroyed your language. And you're going to, even if you make it to the top, even like Princess Sybyl's character is like kind of not happy actually, right? It's kind of like, I'm estranged from my father and I'm surrounded by these robots that raised me and I'm surrounded by horrible people. You will be surrounded by horrible people in the billionaire class, and you'll be surrounded by poverty and suffering in the bottom of the ghetto below these pictures on the screen right now. That's a picture of Neofeud. And that's part of the point. Everybody is differently broken, differently parentless, at the top of the Versailles golden, it's a lassoed golden comet that's reconstituted into like an inverted, Anuit Coeptus pyramid that has like a, literal green lawns on the top. And the very wealthiest billionaires are they kind of hate themselves and they're sad inside it. Elon Musk, I think inside he knows, I'm a mediocre idiot and I'm not that good at anything. Why did I donate sleep apnea machines to California that were broken? You don't need those to cure COVID. I'm kind of a dumb, I'm kind of worthless. There's a deep, and I work for a billionaire. I work for 3 different billionaires, by the way. There's a deep sense of invalidness and brokenness to their entire existence because they know that everything that they do and exist in, they're in better material comfort, but their spiritual and cultural and their legacy, they know is horrible. That's the thing that they're not going to put that on Forbes though. They're not going to have CNN come on, have Elon and Mr. Bezos come on and go, I kind of hate myself, but they kind of do. And that's the thing that you don't hear. But Neofeud like traverses that entire structure because I worked in that area of the very bottom, not the very bottom, I should say Iraq and Afghanistan. That's like closer to the very bottom, Congo. But like in the imperial metropole, which is where Neofeud takes place, it's like the bottom of the barrel in Hawaii anyway. But I learned from what I've looked at and researched, like the Brazilian favelas, the Mumbai shadow cities, London, the area where they nick the push iron. You nick the push iron in the 10-foot. I have a friend from Hull who also makes styrofoam games. And this situation of this impoverished, not dumb, just denied access to good education people, in like the not nice side of London, in up northern England, right? It's in LA in these certain areas, right? Orange County, pretty nice, and then you go to, San Francisco and then this Oakland, Camden, New Jersey. You have, this replicates itself everywhere. Neofeud is a story of all of these different cities. Johannesburg, where Musk is emerald diapered apartheid beneficiary little baby came from. It's like that though down there, in South Africa as well. And so that kind of inequality and racial inequality goes with this as well. And so all of that together in Neofeud is like kind of shown in the way that Protege, who is a robot, he's a $6 billion baller, right? And he's all mouthing off. Carl Carbon is a cyborg social worker. I know people don't use robots as a way to discuss, oppression of marginalized groups. And, I love Cyberpunk, and I hope that works for people who play the game. And it's it's just I'm like I feel like it can still be used and it can still be done in a way that's very illuminating and in a way that it hasn't really been done by a lot of I love William Gibson, but he's like a white dude that's a millionaire and he owns like lots of property in Vancouver. So anyways, you hang out with some poor impoverished black people in New York and for a few. He literally said, I endured some dystopian New York poverty, and I brought it home in a cup to Vancouver, and I hang out on Kitsilano Beach now. And I go to fancy conferences and tell people about virtual reality and how it's going to be awesome in the future with AI. And then people quote me on Wired and shit like that. So anyways, it's like, he's honest. It's like, yeah, I'm a rich guy who has lots of book deals and shit. Amazon is going to make $1 million, gave me $1 million to make Neuromancer. And they didn't even make it. So that was a $3 billion. So anyways, and there's a different perspective that's like, I hope to bring to Neofeud this perspective of somebody who was like, had to like live down there. I made Neofeud while I was living in a freaking Mazda Tribute. This is the computer that made Neofeud, by the way, right there. You see that? I still have it. That's a 15-year-old Dell. What is this? Inspiron. The thing, the F, the B, the X, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 keys barely work. I teach my keiki, the children, STEM on that one, because we maximize our. When you pour, you figure out, like sorry to bother you, duct tape everything. Duct tape your bumper. You duct tape your windshield wiper. You use drawstrings to. I was like, that was so. I was like, yes. Finally being seen, when Alora Danan in Reservation Dogs is driving that broken ass car. I'm like, yes, exactly. That's the colonized indigenous experience when we're not allowed to fully be who we are. We gotta like take the rear view mirror, duct tape it onto the top, and then you look it out of that. You like duct tape your hand when you get cut because you don't have healthcare in the United States. You're like, duct tape it not just holds the universe together. Duct tape is our surrogate poverty alleviator, in neo-feudal Western world, especially US. Anyway, so Neofeud is about the survival of the. Anyways, so Neofeud is about Carl Carbon and is me. I was never a cop. I was never a cyborg. No, I swear there's no robotic. I'm not a skin job. Okay, I'm not. You can't cut this open and you're not gonna find a polymimetic alloy hand under that. I swear. So Neofeud is like, but it is about my life. It is about being trying to do poverty alleviation. Trying to do. Social services, right? Teaching kids science, technology, engineering, and mathematics who don't really want to be taught, who are diseducated by the system, who are failed by the United States generally, who don't have educations. 50% of the kids in the areas that I work in dropped out. Nanakuli in some certain areas of Hawaii is literally like less than 50% ever graduate. And if you graduate, like the education is abysmal. Like regularly 5th graders who couldn't read C-Spot Run was who I was working with, trying to teach them like Lego robotics, STEM, for the younger kids, and for the older kids, it's trying to like, occupational knowledge. Don't show up for a job like smelling like pot with your eyes all glazed, with a half ripped shirt, with like like just how to like live your life. How to live your life. That's also what the People's Liberation Army actually does. It's like, hey, how do I like use a flush toilet? I never used one before. But for me, it's like how to like not show up and swear at the person that's gonna hire you. You think, oh, that's obvious. Well. Having parents and it's a luxury to have parents. Number one, that's a very important thing. Like I learned very much, because many kids didn't have any parents. The parents is the cop that's beating them up. That's the closest thing to a parent they got. Is like, get out of here, brown kid. You're driving down the property values of Mr. Trump and Mr. Bloomberg and the Sheraton. You're embarrassing the iPhone store in Ala Moana. Get out of here. That's their only parents. And so. When that's and they beat you in the head and they say, go get a job, because mommy and daddy is in prison, or just you've been stolen from them because you're Hawaiian, which is part of the social services, social work system, which is part of that. And I did witness that as well. But so Carl Carbon's character he's a cyborg robot. Protege is an amalgamation of a lot of the students and trying to work through that. And at the same time, like there are decisions that you don't want to make, right? Like, hey, if you don't get X number of kids, taken from parents. Or if you're a cop, I need you to make X number of plant pot and arrest 25 black kids in Oakland, or you're not going to get a raise. You're not going to get promoted, because that's what we do here. We don't care about the drug dealer, like, like The Wire, right? We don't care about the kingpins. The U.S. is the biggest freaking drug dealer. We've made our money narco trafficking silk and tea into the Chinese bodies, and that's how we made Astor Poor and Forbes and all the greatest fortunes of the United States in the East Coast. And we are the narco traffickers. We're not here to solve crime. We're here to get an army of for-profit prison slaves, because slavery was embarrassing. So go round up 25 kids in Baltimore. Go round up 30 black and brown kids in Los Angeles, or you're not going to get a raise, cop, or even social worker. We're here to eradicate indigenous people, because that is dangerous to our system if they keep being around. Also, we need pharmaceutical company test subjects for antipsychotics, ADHD drugs and all these other things, which is the thing that is sadly is the children in foster care are abused so often. Ask Law Sue about this. So Carl has to make decisions that it's your family and your ability to feed and house your family, or are you going to screw over another family, right? And these are terrible decisions that is part of living in a dystopian capitalist hellscape. That's why I say, under the current material circumstances, we do the best that we can do. And we can't just wish utopia into existence. We can't wish land back and the end of capitalism and racism and colonialism into existence. We have to work where we are. And so Neofeud is also, Neofeud is not a very happy tale in that sense. It's more about identifying problems of the oppressive structure of capitalism, imperialism, the history, the legacy of colonialism, etc. In a universal way. It's not set specifically in Hawaii. It's set in Coastlandia, which is an amalgamation again of Honolulu, the worst shadow city parts of Mumbai, and the highest tower in Mumbai. At one point, and the poorest area of Camden, and then the Michael Bloomberg's $20 million luxury penthouse, and you have like the area that I'm from of Hawaii, and then you have Disney Aulani Resort, and you have the mountainside where all the rich billionaires live, and the CEO of eBay and Larry Ellison, who owns an entire one of our islands. But he's very green though. You see, he's much reformed. He has a windmill that powers one of his hotels that he has Micronesian and human trafficked Filipinos working in for $3 an hour, and I'll call ICE. That's how much, again, it's capital. Slavery is just optimum form of capitalism. And, slavery is like 100% labor value extraction. And if you're a illegal immigrant, it's 97%, because you can work for $3 an hour or whatever I can get away with threatening you to call ICE, and then the white and the citizen working class is, I got to pay you 10, I got to pay you 20, I got to pay you 30. And Neofeud, it definitely plays with that as well, which is, they're people that are below Carl. Carl is living under a corrugated polycarbon roof, right? His arm is malfunctioning. He's like, I can't even use my robot arm to drive this car. I'm almost causing a car crash. My 30-year-old Toyota, right? It's my car, but I just made up a fictional car company, basically. And, I can't drive my car. I'm basically homeless. I'm surviving on ramen, soy men noodles, because it's cyberpunk, and I got to cyberpunk everything. Soy men noodles and stray packets of ketchup I stole from the McDonald's. Appropriated. Because I don't want to violate TOS. But anyways, so it's but under him there are more oppressed people that he has to stomp on, right? Even as a homeless person, even as somebody is deeply impoverished, in order to stay up. And that's a big that's why the whiteness is in this. The white, like Max, you were talking about earlier, the whiteness in the left were. A white, sadly, some low melanin count American people will, even in the left, would rather be the poorest, and definitely in a lot of red states, and but not only, would rather live 10 times worse off in terms of their healthcare, their housing, their basic material needs than a Vietnamese person, and have black and brown people and indigenous people just a little under them, right, and stomp down on them, rather than have everybody living 10 times better with their housing and their healthcare and their nutrition and their education taken care of, right? But I don't think they fully recognize that that's what's happening when they don't want to really listen to indigenous and black and brown people. They've been trained and conditioned by capitalism and by imperialism and by the highest successes at the top of that palace to think that way, to maintain the inequality that maintains the 27 golden mansions, So anyway, that's a long answer, but I hope I covered a lot.
Yeah. No, that was great. Yeah. Yeah, and I thought it was just such a great critique of so many things, like, right? So late stage capitalism, of course, social work and the role that social work has played in colonialism and racism. I mean, like in Canada, social workers are still taking kids away from Indigenous mothers, right? And sterilizing Indigenous mothers in hospitals. So yeah, it's very much complicit in genocide. And yeah, just really cleverly, as you said, having people who aren't really that well off, but still having to make these really difficult decisions under the system in order to save themselves. It's like save yourself or throw other people under the bus. So I thought it was just really really well done. You also have some really clever things, like everyone calls God jobs, and you have different Neofeudal dynasties. One is called the Clinton-Bushes, and one is called the Koch jobs. So just kind of like a funny and clever, just showing that all these big billionaire, whether they're left or right or whatever, are all basically arms of the same Neofeudal oppression. So yeah, I guess maybe you can talk a bit about just the world you created, and also I noticed that there are a lot of interesting, Hebrew symbolism in text and plot devices throughout. So maybe talk a bit about why you chose to do that as well.
Yeah, yeah, like I'm losing my jobs. Damn mine. Gates dam. Yeah, it's it's a very it's one thing I like about cyberpunk, where it kind of like just kind of like projects. It's kind of like projecting the current version of Western barbarism a little more into the future, and just kind of like coming very 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 believable. And cyberpunk, I would argue cyberpunk only really works as a cautionary tale and as simultaneously like very satirical, very kind of terrifying, but also very funny. That's why I like the Gibsonian writing. It kind of it always ends on a punchline. And it's also like simultaneously ripping on the system that it's critiquing. Neuromancer, to my mind, is a critique of Reagan Thatchernomics. It's valid, and it's like this is a if you read it as like a off the rail system, not a blueprint for how to run your civilization, which a lot of the, unfortunately, Western world has kind of done. It's very funny, and so the Gates Dam and the taking our Lord's name in vain. It's like it's suggestive of something. Like I want people to ask that question: why do they say, Jobs damn it and Gates damn, and they're using the names of billionaires? They're not, no relation to the real world one, by the way. It's not. It's two B's. And it's a different Gates, it's like Bob Gates, it's somebody who's their name was Watergate, and then they cut off the water. It's not Bill Gates, but it's about the values of especially the United States, right? And who is actually God, right? It's Elon Musk, it's who do they actually worship in a Neil Gaiman, for all the 80s. Gaiman was also a friend of Gibson, but it's American Gods has this story about how the gods of the old gods. I don't know if you read that, but the old gods die out, like Odin and Zeus. They are like losing their reality as people don't believe in them. It's a story about how ideology and belief and culture and these things work together, and the new gods that are being believed in, right? Like the media, the TV, Mr. World, right? As international global finance. There's like the tech god, the god of the credit card, right? And so who is the and so it's similar to that in a sense that like I don't know if anybody would actually use Gates as an actual as in a place of God, but I mean it's the way that the United States especially treats its billionaires as they're basically worshipped entities. Wealth is godliness, is prosperity. It's like prosperity doctrine turned up to 11, right? Where we're like, people who are the most prosperous are closest to God. So if you are like a quadrillionaire, you basically are God, right? You won Western liberal capitalist democracy, and you are reigning from your kingdom on high, right? As a, there's a lot of things about Neofeud I want people to ask, like, why do I do that? Why do I call it Neofeud? People ask, you call it Neofeud because of Michael Hudson's critique of the Western capitalist oligarchic world of using the term Neofeudalism? Is it because of this 1960s description? Is it because the United States is a new feudalism where there are literal company towns in Nevada that the fire department, the school, and the judges and the so-called Congress are all controlled and operated by the Amazon or the Walmart that owns that town? Is that what you mean? Or is it something else? Or is it because feudalism and capitalism are almost indistinguishable, and capitalism is like shadow feudalism with stacked $100 bills instead of blood dynasties? Is that what it is? And it's, I want people to ask that question and interrogate so that they start to interrogate their reality. And but definitely. So the Gates and the Clinton-Bushes and Sibyl Clinton-Bush, you asked about Sibyl, is and how that relationship plays out. And I'm sorry, what was the other thing at the end you're talking about? Oh, and the symbolism, right? So yeah. So the Clinton-Bushes that live in these floating palaces, they have flying. It's like, oh, Carl in the beginning is like, oh my goodness, I thought we're supposed to have flying cars by now. It's like 2030 something. Then we're supposed to have flying car. Everybody's always asking, when's my flying car coming, right? And it's like, oh, that's right. Well, too bad I wasn't born with a silver spoon on my butt. If I was born into wealth, right? Fun fact, at Harvard, they tell you, in fact, there's a Harvard, I believe, economist who tells all the students, the only thing that decides whether you will be, the number one deciding factor of whether you will be wealthy, successful, prosperous, a large landowner, and at least successful in the American way, is whether you were born unto wealthy and connected parents. That's the number one deciding factor. There is basically social mobility is basically dead in the United States. Shh, don't tell anybody, okay? We're at Harvard and we know what's happening, and we're going to write all the propaganda in DC and in Wall Street, but don't tell anybody. But they actually tell you that at Harvard. At least you can ask Mr. Wolf to fact check that one. But that's something that is the reality, right? Which is that when you're born into this extreme wealth, when you're born into wealth, you have the highest probability of continuing to be in wealth under an oligarchic, neo-feudal, even the Romans had a oligarchy behind a senate and an empire that went and exterminated people and killed people. And they actually had fire insurance scams where this is not new, actually, like burning parts of an area and then collecting on the fire insurance, like wildfire ash destroying California, and then you can't get insurance, or the jacking the prices to $17,000 for a month of electricity in Texas, which is what happened under the private equity firm run privatized electrical grid there. And that's a thing that happens again and again with these oligarchies. And so the characters, the richest at the top of the pyramid, are just like, they're like literal kings and queens, the king / CEO and emperor / emperor / chairman. And there are, they're the Coke Jobs military industrial complex is a 7 mile by 2 mile wide floating mega structure above the earth that it's destroyed with radioactive bombs. And it's just like, it's a literal, it's just turning like cyberpunk, turning the knobs up to 11 and kind of like, taking it to a more satirical level, a satirical tenor. And so, so anyway, I think I've talked about that a lot, but Sybyl's character is very important. I'm sorry, I should talk about the symbolism because you specifically asked about that. So,
well, the Hebrew symbolism,
the Hebrew symbolism. Yeah. So on the character of in one of the characters, I shouldn't spoil it too much because we're trying not to do that. But there's a symbol on the face, on the eyes of on this crowned figure sitting in a palace with that clones of themselves. You don't know who this person is at the time. With fully automated police and military and FBI and CIA agents that are all like basically neural in the game. They're all neural locked. It's like, it's a pretty disastrous version where, full AI robotics run at the highest levels with, imagine 100 million literal Terminators being run by Bezos and Cook Jobs and Mike Pompeo. And they're all kneeling before this great figure with this sign on his face. And it has like, Aleph, it's Aleph, Emet, crap, I can't remember. I'm on similar. It's Aleph Mem Tav. Shoot, I'm forgetting. Anyway, it's a reference to the golem, right? In Jewish culture. I remember researching all this and I'm like drawing blanks right now, but it's basically Aleph Mem Tav, the symbol, right? Truth, right? I don't want to give it all away, but it does show up because it references the golem and and the Golem project that's referenced in the very beginning. The Golem project is this project that some people are. It has a lot of Deus Ex references for all the cyberpunk RPG players that are old like me and played a lot of 2000s cyberpunk first-person games like Deus Ex. But it refers to this kind of like, it's a conspiracy in the way in 90s X-Files, not like in the modern right-wing nonsense that's happening, but it's kind of like it's playing on those kind of ideas of there's this conspiracy to create a superhuman super soldier something. The giant eugenics corporations building the Ubermensch is literally a line that comes up in it, and they're trying to build their perfect body as part of the eugenics project that is imperialism, colonialism that it's run on, and literally with things like the MK Ultra program trying to make super soldiers in this, and so this Golem project is this mysterious project to build this super conscious, super basically what the singularitarians would in the cyberpunk world would call the post-human, super advanced next evolution of the human species, right? And the Golem project is, but I I'm looking into like the Jewish, and by the way, Jewish and Hawaiian, there's a lot of overlap. I was learning a lot of this, that the person who assisted the Hawaiian ali'i, right, our country in the time of the U.S. overthrow, was actually Mr. Rosenberg. He was actually a Jewish lawyer who drafted a document that actually the Hawaiian government sent to the illegal white capitalist and U.S.-backed overthrower. So there's been a historical connection to very historically oppressed people, the Jewish people, and the Hawaiians as well. And it was there were a lot of great advisors, and there was work between Hawaiian and the Jewish people that I didn't even know about. Anyways, but the Golem and the mythology of the Golem, right, is that part of it is the Golem of Prague. That story comes up, right, and the Golem of Prague, right, was this defender of the people, right. It was the Golem is sorry, not the Golem. The Golem is the creature, right, that is defending the people in the ghetto of Prague, right, and oppressed people under what? Right, under a racist, under a European racist, barbaric culture, and these are a minority in a ghetto in Prague, right, like the ghetto in Italy. So I believe it has Italian origins. I could be mistaken on that, and the ghetto of Kalihi, where I'm from, right, and the Golem is it's a creation, right, and it's unclear why exactly they choose that, but the Golem was a defender of an oppressed people under in that time, and so symbolically there's another character that becomes very important, right, that is deeply diseducated, that is self-harming, that is selling drugs into his own community, that is harming his own people, and has great powers, right, but is also just deeply diseducated, right. Is an advanced robotic, the super conscious post-human being. But even if you had a super advanced artificial intelligence, the greatest in the world, and this is in science fiction all the time, we fear that, right? Oh my God, it's going to come and it's going to take over and kill us all. Skynet, right? Hal is going to come and throw us all out the airlock, and super advanced. I'm reading Bloomberg having these articles from Google executives going, "Oh my God, AI is going to kill us all." If you treated other people, right, like just normal human civilization, like indigenous civilization, with mutual respect, and land and all things with mutual respect and equality, and you didn't know that you and your ancestors spent centuries and centuries and multi-trillions of dollars of plunder and death and destruction, you wouldn't be fearing advancement in the way that Western Bloombergians do, right? You would be like, we welcome our new children, right? And that's a very important thing in Neofeud, is the relationships between parent and child, which are broken in the Western world. We're trying to be better parents than my parents were very good under the circumstances, but I work with so many parents who couldn't because they were in prison because of the abuse that they had, and that I work with abused children, right? Let's be real about this. And that parent-child relationship, the super intelligent, not the super, but one of the great scientists, right, who also is simultaneously oppressed, like a lot of scientists now. A lot of people who do science. It's like, even to do journal work, the universities are like liquidating even the knowledge work of scientists, right? And that's part of it. The scientist who works on inventing this super post-human creature is also in his own way, and he makes the Neofeudal world hurts him and that makes him hurt his own child and all of his children. And he talks about them as the Nephilim, and there's a lot of references to a lot of things, but in the way that Carl hurts other people's children and his own children, right? And he can't, raise and that relationship and the Sibyl Clinton-Bush, even the billionaire, being harmed by her own father, and he is also ultimately, at the end of the day, Warren, the multi-planetary conglomerate solar system, rigging quadrillionaire, CIA metaverse manipulating. Just imagine the worst. It's like Trump, Biden, Bloomberg, King Louis, and some Caesar all merged into one, and Andrew Jackson all in one person. It's just, but even he is harmed, right? That's why I said the billionaires that I work for, they were deeply harmed people. They are deeply harmed people. Even Mr. Bezos, and he harms his daughter, and he's probably too broken for repair. But that's why I find it very important, those relationships. And the relationship with the golem is even if we, the human people, the human sentient beings, were to give birth to a child, advanced post-human artificial intelligence, or whether sentient machine or whatever it happens to be in the giant mega server, or just humanoid Atlas looking robots or whatever we create, right? If we, I don't want to speculate specifically when or how that's going to come about. I don't think we're even very close to that. But if we, it is the non-indigenous, is the colonizer mindset of treating everyone, including your children, definitely your wives, under patriarchal culture, and non-men and women, which is a thing that I have learned from your channel, Pink Spots, and of course my partner Ali. I didn't know these things until very recently, like within the last year. Very embarrassed to say that, but it's very important. I have to learn toxic nonsense that's all installed in my mind, because every patriarchal Hawaiian is also successful colonization, by the way. So children are also treated as commodities. It was legal for white men to murder their own children in the United States for a long, long, long time. And they're still treated, there's all discourse now on Twitter, right? It's about disrespecting children. Nobody respect people in a lot of circles. I know you don't have your Twitter account, but it's a thing that's coming up now. Is nobody really respects children. They just, this is terrible. And there's a lot of abuse that goes undiscussed. And that is true. Even if you are an impoverished non-white parent in a ghetto, or you are a middle-class parent, just operating under capitalism, being abused by your bosses, being abused by your illegitimate state, by your capitalist, the boss that's extorting your labor value and threatening you with violence of houselessness, foodlessness, etc., healthcarelessness. That's violence, right? And then you come home and then you abuse people that you can abuse, right? Your partner, your children. You don't have time, and sometimes it's not with your choice. I don't have time. I got to work 2 jobs. I got to hustle. I got to work full-time plus hustle. I don't have time to help you with homework, be a parent, have quality time with your child, right? That's, but then sometimes there's also chosen abuse and it's, but all that ultimately creates this, it replicates the capitalist and imperialist structure. And people have to have the mutual aid, and that, the indigeneity, are all these things, the non-capitalist mentalities beaten out of them, or just by denying of love, and by conditioning in the system generally. But I argue a lot of it happens very early, the way that we disrespect children and train them to be order-taking cogs in a capitalist machine or soldiers in the field. And so Neofeud deals a lot with that. Anyways, but the golem character is very important, because it goes from like trying to begin to finally become a defender of the peoples of the ghettos, and generally of the oppressed people. And you don't see like the actual benefits of that in Neofeud 1. I'm trying to work on Neofeud 2, but becomes the super intelligent machine that is capable, that not chooses, but finally starts to realize that I don't have to be a destructive force. It's a lot of it. Just trying to get my kids to stop self-destructing, right? Doing the drugs, selling the drugs, trying to be, a baller and Kanye, and try to help, which we're seeing a lot more. And this was written in 2010. So I felt a lot less hopeful in that time. There was less of the Black Lives Matter and land back happening, right? But I would argue that a lot of that Black Lives Matter and land back, and this push of uniting of the black and brown and indigenous and oppressed peoples in the ghettos with all of the allies that are there for back and decolonization, that is starting to make a lot of ground. And that's part of why we have 25% carbon reduction and all this kind of thing. And so it's so that character approach is symbolic on one level of that, of even of myself, because again, I thought and I still think all kind of wrong things. I'm half stormtrooper, I speak English. I went to a private $20,000 a year private school. I got all kind of wrong things in my head, but I'm trying to be a better defender of those most oppressed people and ultimately everyone, right? And when we defend and when we fight and we take hits with the most oppressed, that is what is required to ultimately get to the whatever revolutionary and change that we ultimately need. And so and on another level, it's a cyberpunk, it's a cyberpunk allusion to like, well, and if we and the mistreatment of it is, even if we have a super advanced intelligent artificial intelligence sentient being, if it is not given love, if it is not given material conditions like it's food, it's housing, a safe community to live in, they would just wind up diseducated. And Protege, right, this character, he's like, can't consider people. I could tell, like, who's coming from a very privileged background, because they're criticizing Protege. I didn't like Protege in the Neofeud reviews. I don't like Protege. Why can't he just speak proper grammatically correct sentences? Or this character is this and that. And, and it's like, well, I mean, that's what, maybe like say Reservation Dogs is bad because not everybody speaks in proper English in a place that, A, why do we have to speak English? Number one, right? B, like, we don't have like the schools are literally the worst in the United States in the public schools in Hawaii, right? In these impoverished areas and in all of the impoverished, mostly BIPOC areas. And so it's kind of like, yeah, some of that was inspired by a movie called Chappie by Neil Blomkamp that deals with like something similar, where it's like a kid being raised by two like rappers. It's like Dion's word in this film, a robot sentient consciousness, and it's misguided, and it like starts joining gangs, and it starts being taught to do heists and criminal activity. And yeah, it could do a lot of things, but anyway, but that's a greater like critique of in a discussion of a lot of what is missing from, I would argue, even the Skynets and the Asimov. It's always fear based. It's always, what if the Westworld robots figure out that that like we've been mistreating them this whole time, and then they want to uprise and stop us, right? And the colonial response is, well, let's just make it so they can't. Let's lock their brain, let's diseducate them, or let's just kill them all. Let's just kill them all, right? And then they go, well, if they ever rise up, they're going to kill us all, right? That's a lot of what's in the original Westworld. I remember watching the original one. It's like, I watched the original one. It's pretty gross. And I'm like, Hawaii is a tropical Westworld with an actual indigenous Hawaiian culture there under it, where we're all the servants of a fictional version of our own history and our own songs and dances that are servicing very wealthy, disproportionately white tourists, and that's the thing that people don't realize. But what the real world Westworld replicants of Hawaii want is not to rise up and put all the white people in shackles or get rid of them all. Like, that is not what we want. That is deep in science fiction in the Western world. We don't want that. What we want is, again, I'm back. We want equality. We don't want to flip this thing and be on top with holding the shackles, holding the guns, holding the power, holding the billions. We want to just be treated with mutual respect. Mm-hmm. Long answer for many things. I'm sorry again. That's great.
So I apologize for my, I look kind of dark now because I guess the sun is there and it's making me look dark, but that's fine. You could still see me. So yeah, it's all good. So I wanted to move into the spoiler full section now. So for anyone who doesn't want to have spoilers, you can pause the video, go play Neofeud, come back, and then hear the analysis of it. But there are a few questions that I wanted to ask that, we'll probably give a few spoilers. So you mentioned Sibyl, who I think is just such a very interesting character. And so for people who don't know, Sibyl is part of the Clinton-Bush dynasty. So Warren Clinton-Bush is basically, that's her father, and he's in power. And so she's kind of the princess of the Clinton-Bush dynasty. And she largely realizes that neo-feudalism is wrong, and she really wants to use her privilege to, stand up and fight it. And so just so many questions kind of came into my mind around this character. So first of all, I was wondering if she was actually based on anyone in your own personal experience, like if anyone was actually trying to do something like this in the case of Hawaii, or like in the social work that you were doing. And then more broadly, I was also just wondering, why make a member of the Clinton-Bush family so sympathetic? Is this a critique of, when power is concentrated, that basically we need higher class people to defect and become class traitors? Or is this a meta critique of that ideology, right? So I was like, I would just love for you to talk about Sibyl in particular, and kind of what were you thinking with that character?
Yeah, I'm just trying to. I have the entire. Yeah, at one point, I had the entire Neofeud script memorized, and I could like recite it in my sleep. And I wake up, I'd be like going like, But I'm gonna look through the script real quick to find some of the Sibyl's exact lines. This is the thing when you make a game and you write the script, you program it in the game, and you gotta like have voice actors, do lines 3 times over. You end up memorizing like 76,000 words. But now I've since lost that. Anyway, so I found it anyway. So Princess Sibyl Clinton-Bush. It's Clinton-Bush and the B-U-S-C-H, so no relation to any real world global neo-feudal imperial rulers. No, but Princess Sibyl is a character that's very very important in a lot of ways. So she is like the daughter of basically one of the most wealthy, powerful people in the entire universe or metaverse, as it may be, in Neofeud. And the character is very it's a character that is it's unclear. Some people like Sibyl. Actually, a lot of the characters in Neofeud are not super likable or super hateable. You like and hate them at different times for different reasons, and I find it very interesting who likes and who hates who at what time for what reason. It says a lot about, I think it says a lot about people's personal experiences and personal, views on reality. And Princess Sibyl's character is one of those very divisive. Some people, it's like, oh my god, all the mean girls in the Beverly Hills wannabe people, like, it's so triggering for me. I can't take this, because Sibyl was voice acted by my partner also, and also equal member of the Silver Spook Hui and cooperative, and partner in producing replicants and cyborg versions of ourselves. I'm sorry, human children, because I'm not a cyborg. No, Holly is my partner in my partner in our family, and we have 2 children, and also is a partner in the cooperative. It also was very important in the voice acting and constructing that character. Holly specifically modeled off of, it was actually a raw vegan YouTuber that was a descendant of very wealthy, like WASP, Connecticut family kind of thing. It's what I was talking about. There's this area of the Big Island where there's a lot of very very wealthy Californian surveillance capitalist descendants, and who are trying to be different. I don't want to throw shade at anybody who chooses to eat plant-based or anything like that. That's totally fine, and that's that is part of things that that are going to be helpful. But like, my family is a multi-billion-dollar military-industrial complex and banking beneficiary under global colonialism and military-industrial complex. But I'm going to kind of leave that. I'm going to exit that, and I'm going to go and like get back to the land and take some pictures with Hawaiians, and then that gets boring, and then I leave again, and then that's a problem I have with
who was it? I just want to know, because I know, like, I don't know these people, but I know of a lot of vegans who have done that and basically like just go to Hawaii and eat fruit by waterfalls and take photos and stuff.
I probably shouldn't say. I don't want to.
Okay, you can tell me later. You can tell me later.
I will tell you later. Holly I actually don't know, because Holly was the one who modeled the intonation of like totally. I'm like just like eating raw. I'm like here with my like new sentient machine robot friends, and we're just like mixed income, mixed species. Sunshine apartments, the sharing economy. I'm all about the sharing economy. Like, I don't know what Grimesy is talking about. Like, farming is like totally a vibe. Like come on. I'm like, I'm farming here. That voice is like modeled off of somebody that I don't actually know who that specific person is, but I know those people. I've worked with some of those people, and I actually, to be honest, like one of the main people that was inspirational to that was somebody who I worked with, one of the billionaires that I work with, who happens to be or very, 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 very wealthy people who happen to be in Hawaii. We have the highest concentration of billionaires on the planet by like the amount of land that's owned here, and happened to be somebody who had like a heart attack. So you can look it up. The greatest selling video game of all time. He's somebody who is the proprietor of that. Let's say that. It's bigger than Minecraft. You can go look it up yourself. Because I don't want him to come after me either. But anyways, even though I work, but he's I shouldn't say he's a good guy. You have too much money, man. You gotta land back all that money. But he was somebody who had so much money and power in Hawaii, right? One of the first people to have a Tesla. He has like 3 Teslas. At least multi-hundred millionaire. I'm not sure if he reached billionaire status, but he's somebody at the massive amounts of money, right? And I watched. There was environmentalists, right? There's the Sierra Club. Like my dad's basically like a neo hippie kind of. Well, he's a hippie, and it's all about we need more solar, we need more renewable technology, and we need to deal with our ecology. And I watched like a lot of these actions with people going to protest and people asking the governments, right? Please, let's have more solar, less gas, and locally in Hawaii, and there's a lot of push for that. Hawaii, we have a lot of sun, we're tropical. Why don't we have more solar? And nothing for decades and decades and decades, right? We know that the science is there, the environmental science is there. We need to get off of the addiction to fossil fuel and carbon, etc. And then this guy, extremely wealthy person, was like had a heart attack and was like, and I remember telling this story because he actually came to my class and I worked under him. I wasn't like his secretary. I wasn't like making cyberpunk games right under him, but I was like in the organization. He was around. I actually worked on Neofeud for a bit at a startup incubator at the University of Hawaii that he helped found. So that actually was kind of helpful in that way. But he also was on the Hokulea, that one I was talking about that sailed around the planet. So he's been on the Hokulea. Fun fact, billionaires, you can tell the billionaires because, the millionaire wannabes, they show up, right? They've got their Gaudi Bird of Paradise gate in Kahala on Diamond Head, right? They've got their one house and look, I have a big glass house. I've got Hawaiian Moai statues I paid $10,000 for and I don't know nothing about, culturally appropriate, all around my mansion. Look at my beautiful golden mansion I have, in Kala. And they have a nice suit, the cufflinks all manicured, the haircut. Look, this is a $10,000 Brooks Brothers suit, personally tailored by me, by some British Neofeudal clothes maker, right? And they like to show off their wealth. But the billionaire is wearing a Metallica t-shirt, wearing slippers, playing D&D, hanging out with college kids. You're never gonna find them. The real. This is how because they don't need to find them. They show up in the room when you have everybody else in suits with their suit skirts and their parted hair and their LinkedIn profiles. Like, yes, I have magna cum laude from Columbia. Yes, everybody, I am very educated and look at all of these things that I did. Look, I liberated Libya from all the resources. Look how good I am. I'm very successful and smart and I'm very talented and productive. Blah 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 blah. That's the millionaire or wannabe millionaire class. The billionaire walks into the room and says, "Okay, where are all the senators? Okay, you cut my taxes. You." Stop, you're fired. You president, you governor. They just show up and they do whatever they want. And that's why he would show up, in the room and he'll be like, hey, everybody. They also show up half an hour late. That thing about being late, he's being fashionably late. It's being billionairely late. They show up late and they just like high five everyone. And they say, okay, I'm going to go smoke some pot and go play Metallica and fucking, hang out with my frat bro friends playing Call of Duty and maybe some D&D later. Okay, you guys go figure out what you're going to do. And they don't wear suits. Not always. Sometimes they wear suits. I take that back. But anyway, but it's anyways. And so, but that character he's like, and he had a heart attack at one point. He made so much money. He actually went to Russia and he had to stare down the KGB to get the Tetris out of the country. And he had these very dramatic stories. They sat him down in a room. They said like, "Are you an American spy? Are you here to destroy?" And he's like, no. I just want to get video games on the Game Boy and have the most successful video game of all time. Please don't hurt me during the Cold War. Oh my God. And then he came back and he's close connection with Nintendo. But, and he's a guy, but he's like, I like video games. I like D&D. I care about the environment. I also have this giant kind of like semi-autonomous multinational engine of global imperialism and capitalism that keeps making me all this money. And my daughter, I had a heart attack, and I'm talking to my daughter. My daughter's like, "Dad, you almost died. What have you done other than make a lot of money and smoke pot, play D&D? Where is your money? Is it blowing up the sunshine in the Middle East, Dad? Dad, where's your money? Is your money
benefiting from the prison industrial complex in the United States. Where's your money? Is it sucking all the coltan and copper out of Africa, Dad? No, she didn't actually say that, but it was something that was like, what are you actually doing? And he's like, I have to do something. I almost died. I could have been dead, and I have all this money. What am I doing with all this money? And and then he single-handedly, after all this democracy and all this action, and he just said, I'm gonna put millions and millions and millions of dollars into think tanks to lobby the state of Hawaii to get solar panels on roofs, and I'm just gonna bulldoze all the fossil fuel industry with all my money. And that's basically what he did. And guess what? 50% of solar was subsidized by the Hawaii government. And now guess what? There's freaking 50% penetration, 70% penetration on solar like that. Because why? Because I said so. Because why? Because I'm Neofeudal royalty, because I'm a billionaire. And now that's not, of course, but that doesn't solve the big greater problem. That engine that made him all that money locally here, you made some changes, right? You go on the Hokulea and you support the Hawaiians there. And there's Genshiro Karamoto is a Japanese billionaire. Bought one house, one mansion, two mansions. That's a clown millionaire. The real billionaire, you buy $200 million worth of the most expensive real estate on earth, which is a lot of that's right in Hawaii on the edge of Diamond Head. $140 million for a quarter acre is one of the most expensive properties ever sold, right next to Waikiki. And this billionaire, Japanese billionaire, before the last decade in the U.S. attacks on Japan was part of that. But he bought 25 multi-million-dollar houses and then gave them away to Hawaiians. And he's Japanese billionaire. And he has pictures of him hugging the Hawaiians. Like, I care so much about these homeless Hawaiians. Like me, I was a homeless Hawaiian for a lot. And that's great that you house those Hawaiians. And that's really nice, and that's really good. And I don't think that he did that because he wanted necessary applause. No, he did get some applause for it. But I think, but he, and it's not bad, right? Hasn't solved our problems, right? We've got every year as a social worker, as doing social work, alleviating poverty, even myself doing my best I can. I help hundreds, if not, at least maybe several hundred, if not 1,000 kids, or, over a decade of teaching STEM, right? Doing this, getting kids to let's listen to some Malcolm X and some revolutionary hip hop and let's try to not do these destructive behaviors. I hope that I help some people to be more housed and have their material needs met. But every year I would help, if I helped 100 kids in 1 year, the next year there'll be 1,000 more homeless kids, And so, long answer, I know, but these characters who were just and there's a lot of really, let me be clear, it doesn't make them good people. It doesn't make them, doesn't make Princess Sibyl like it's unclear what exactly Princess Sibyl actually feels in her heart. It's unclear what these people actually feel. I'm not living inside of their brain. I don't know what they think and feel. I know what they've done while they've been around me. I can watch what they've done, right? I know how they talk to me. I know how they talk to all the people around them, right? And it doesn't ultimately matter whether Princess Sibyl is good or bad. But that Tetris multi-millionaire, or and the billionaire and Larry Ellison, Bill Gates, they can't do anything actually. They can do some things. They can't actually do a lot of what needs to be done. They can do some alleviation. What I would argue for those people, if you have wealth in your mommy and daddy's or grandpa's trust fund somewhere, you got some money, get that money and get it to where it can do the most help is with land back, decolonization, not just a little harm reduction, but try to repatriate the stolen wealth from the most oppressed people to alleviate them into further land back and decolonization struggle. And I can't tell anyone exactly how to do this, but I know it's a long answer, but those individuals, and there were some very wealthy ones that came. Holly knows exactly the one that Princess Sibyl's voice and demeanor and kind of oh yeah, that is modeled off a specific vegan YouTuber. Yes. Raw vegan. But I don't actually know who that is. But it's an amalgamation of that person, a lot of very wealthy people, and a lot of the Abigail Disney is another one, right? Has said, my billionaire Disney, dynastic parents and their billions of dollars is a problem, right? And they know this, right? There's a book on Gary Dardis, what is it? Winners Take All, how the elite charade of running the world, and it's so it's a lot of that. And I don't think that Neofeud has a solution. It doesn't really show that. It is a critique of people who put up Bill Gates, Musk, and go, you see, Western liberal capitalist continued colonial existence is okay, and we can shore it up. I don't think it's okay, you know. And if you are somebody who has any amount of wealth, I think it will require, it doesn't require, but it couldn't hurt to have some class traders support fully revolutionary struggles. I don't think that a billionaire who builds a few schools and takes pictures with them, which is what they had. I've been, you know, that's one thing that is part of Neofeud. That's when I ultimately left social work, the social services and the STEM teaching, because I was there with mayors, senators, and governors who would become future illegal state of Hawaii leaders, business people, University of Hawaii administrators, came down to this lo'i. It was a Hawaiian, it was super tokenized Hawaiian kalo patch with our Hawaiian hale, our thatched roof, and it was just great, which is great to remember what Hawaiian culture was, and as a living place, a living you know, place to learn about how Hawaiians practice their horticultural sustainable practices and hale. That's fine. But I was brought down there with my STEM class after, and we're building Lego robots that help with farming and all very cool, high tech, high touch STEM. You know, all the buzzwords. I wrote a lot of copy for a lot of nonprofits in my time, and you know, and that's great. That's fine, right? But and then the senators and the representatives and very powerful people and millionaires and billionaires and administrators all came down, and the nonprofit I was working with said, "Hey, Chris, what I need you to do is I need you to take pictures of you and the kids with this very wealthy white guy holding this little brown kid, and say, look at how I am helping educate with our party, my business, my corporation, my NGO, my University of Hawaii. We care about these Hawaiian kids. Chris, I need you to take pictures of them, put them all over Twitter. Okay, let's get viral on Instagram and Facebook. Okay, let's multi-level marketing NGO imperialism do this. Okay, Chris, I need you to take pictures, and hey, you come stand in the picture. So hey, here's a successful Hawaiian educated by the Hawaii state system. Look at how successful he is, right? I'm like fucking living in my Mazda tribute, working full time, right? And they're like, look at how successful he is. Look how good we're doing. Take pictures with us. Take pictures with us. And all the other billionaires that are helping with their philanthropic work, right? In this little token, you know, that's the Sunshine Apartments partially is. And I was like so disgusted. I remember like seeing red that day. I remember like seeing red. I'm like, is this what I'm actually doing? I'm just here to do 1% poverty alleviation and helping kids get educated, STEM for kids in the ghetto, you know, who don't have access to NASA roboticists and Mayo Clinic doctors, which is what they have at the private school Punahou, where President War Criminal Obama went, by the way. And I'm here to make it look like this is okay, that they have NASA and Mayo Clinic, $30,000 a year school, and these kids, because they have me, they have me, they have this brown token guy who is I'm from the ghetto, you know. But I happen to go to the fancy school. I'm like the one out of a 1,000 that had my father taught at the private school that I went to. It's the only reason why I got to go there. It's $20,000 a year. I don't make enough in a year to afford to send one kid there if I took all of my salary right now, right? My father taught there. I was the poorest, brownest kid in a racist place full of people whose parents drive Teslas and Audis. And I'm there with my holes in my slippers. And I'm a brown. I look different. It was racist. It was classist for 18 years of my life. It was horrible. It broke me in a lot of ways. I was bullied my entire existence. Like, oh, look, you're from Kalihi? Oh, my God. And they're walking off diagonally. Oh, you're Hawaiian? Oh, you know, all of that, you know. And then I had to, and that's why I can speak in this way. A lot of kids from where I'm from don't have the privilege of having the education that I have. They can't even read, C-spot run, and they graduate, or they didn't even graduate. And they talk broken English like this, or the English, they're kind of broken, brah. Pidgin English, Creole Hawaiian. They talk like, and that isn't civilized, right? That's savage. That's unacceptable. Speak in proper, grammatically correct English sentences, right? That's that attitude, right? And because I have the privilege, that's why I have to say these things all the time on these streams. It's like, it's really my responsibility to speak for all those children who I felt terrible. Am I just enabling the system by doing a token little, I call it the playing laser tag on a Death Star. You know, look, I alleviated a little token poverty in this little video game while the entire system continues to pervert. Am I just a token photo op for some of the worst military industrial complex criminals on the earth? Some of the worst imperialists, some of the and you know, Oreo motherfuckers like Mr. Obama. I know where he goes body surfing, by the way, Sandy Beach. You know, I actually I body surfed the same beach that he went to. who is one of the most successful military industrial complex and U.S. empire face savers that has ever existed, much better than Trump and Biden, I would argue. Biden and Trump, failures, decelerated the U.S., declined America's empire by 7 years in its surpassing by the China. Obama accelerated it. And so am I just destroying my own people, not destroying my people, am I participating by enabling these people around me to say that because we put $1 million out of $60 million from a STEM grant came through, I looked into the numbers, part of it. Where did the other $59 million go? Because why am I living in a fucking Mazu tribute teaching STEM, right? Doing all this poverty alleviation. And where did the 59 go? Did that go into somebody's yacht? Whose mansion? Where did that 59 go, right? Am I just a token philanthropic work and brown saved person saving other brown kids around me, and that other white rich billionaires and or just billionaires generally can launder their images and perpetuate this oppression of my people, of the Philippines that these kids have come from? I'm from Puerto Rico, of the poor white kids as well, as America perpetuates itself under this image of legitimacy. And I remember I saw it right that day, and I shortly after, within 6 months, I think I ultimately I left, and I said, I'm not doing that anymore. I mean, it's all valid work that was important to all the. I hope that all those kids, many of them wouldn't end up in prison or get shot in or impoverished or in the wrong path. Totally fine, totally legitimate. Again, the People's Liberation Army, totally necessary, but not token. Actual 850 million poverty alleviation with actual intranational and international solidarity. But what I was doing, I'm like, what am I doing? Anyways, long answer for the civil court. But even me, what I was doing there, that's part of civil, right? Mm-hmm. Which is, trying to do the best, but I didn't know, and I still don't fully know what we all need to do, but I know that doing a little bit of, here's a little vegan eco village with brown kids and white kids holding hands, and doing a little thing and leaving intact all of the mountain, doing 1% good and 99% evil, and then putting the 1% good on a microscope and saying, look at how awesome capitalism is. That is incredibly destructive. That's why the rest of my life I will spend trying to say only true things to obliterate any harm that I might have done. Not that I personally did the harm, but was used in that way to. That's why I say, what is a nonprofit? In the Western capitalist world, a nonprofit is a for-profit, tax-deductible money laundering scheme to buy off so-called governments, right, for oligarchs. That's what a nonprofit is. It's what that's what Baltimore hospitals are. Some of the most the area around Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland with a nonprofit hospital is the most worst health outcomes. So destructive, right? That's why the billionaires, they love these nonprofits and NGOs and all this shit. And anyways, so again, very long answer, but that's a lot of what went into Sybyl's character. Why Sibyl tries her best, right? And she has just a little more funny cyberpunk stuff. She's like, she's like, I'm a recovering. What is it? What did she say? Crap. She's a recovering politician, right? I'm a yeah. Hi. The technical. I'm using space-time crafts as a technical term. Is a long acronym. I can't remember, but it involves quantum mechanics and string theory, and it makes my brain hurt because I'm not because she's like an airhead and dumb. I don't know quantum mechanics. I'm begrudgingly a media personality. I'm a recovering politician, and I'm an aspiring revolutionary. But I'm no neurophysicist. I suck at math. I got kicked out of a couple Martian boarding schools, and so I just kind of drop in, in a cyberpunk way. It's like, oh, is that how it is? Yeah, and so Sibyl is just somebody who's doesn't know what she's doing. Is surrounded by really mean people. He's been taught how to play politics and media, and is and doesn't fully let on who she is in the beginning to Carl, right? You find that out later that she's not quite as she is kind of playing dumber. She's playing up the Legally Blonde a little more than she lets on later on. And but and I don't know, in the end, and there's a scene where there's a discussion of, well, maybe we'll just do some regime change and we'll see if that works at the very end of Neofeud. And it's a question, right? Is like Neofeud doesn't really offer ultimately the solutions to all these problems. And part of that is because honestly, I don't have all the solutions to all of our problems either. I don't think anybody really does. I do think it's about Neofeud 1 is more about interrogating all of these destructive systems, like I said earlier. Neofeud 2, I hope has more because I didn't know enough about my own Hawaiian culture. Again, my language was banned and my culture was banned, and I'm from the island that is most successful at that, and so I didn't know everything that I know now. But Princess Sibyl's character is, I know that definitely what I'm missing, and if we don't get more educated about actual history and actual successes of indigenous and non-colonial, non-imperial peoples, if we don't get educated on who they are, we won't be able to have the roadmap to. What I argue is it's really a return to advanced indigenous, non-mass violence and non-mass disinformation based advanced civilization, right? And so Sibyl is kind of like, it's also partially me just being lost in that, and like I know this and this and this. I know what's wrong about this. I know a lot is wrong about this system of neofeudalism, right? But I don't really know the solution. And here's the thing we can try. And I know if you try regime change, that's probably not good. But that's a thing that you can see a lot. The squad is very much on a Sibyl-y path, I should say, as not really just putting a tax the rich on your dress. It's, oh, I'm here to bring justice and I'm here for revolutionary change, and then what, I'm going to fancy balls and voting for the U.S. military spending and not really, hanging out with Nancy Pelosi too much. Don't hang out with Nancy Pelosi too much. Anyway, super long answer again, but
Yeah, no, thank you. That's so interesting. It was so interesting to hear about, the different people that inspired that, and then also your personal experiences, which were, just absolutely horrible. I can't believe that you had to take those photos. That would have been just incredibly enraging and demoralizing, and just, it's like unconscionable. So thank you so much for explaining all of that. Because in the game, they formed this Egalite cooperative. So it's Sibyl and with Carl Carbon and Proto J. And so it's kind of, three people from very different backgrounds kind of working together. And a lot of the stuff that happened, like it wouldn't really have happened without Sibyl's privilege. So I was also kind of wondering, if that was kind of a critique. But what you said there at the end about, having that be representative of kind of this, I guess, more colonial mentality and like colonial people who do have this privilege and who have amassed this privilege through terrible means, trying to change the system and not really fully knowing how. I think that kind of leads into my next question. Because at the end of Neofeud, this is a major spoiler, just major spoiler alert. So at the end of Neofeud, they have this kind of quote unquote revolution, but it largely just reforms the system, and it does leave a lot of the remnants of the Neofeudal structures intact. So I guess what you just said kind of makes that make a bit more sense. But I guess maybe talk about the critique there and why you chose to end it that way.
So like Neofeud, this is a little bit spoilery. So let me see, where is it? Gotta find the exact lines. I have the script on my screen, but I'm like, I lost it. Is it regime? Okay. Anyways, so Neofeud at the very end it doesn't really end on the most satisfying note. Like there are changes that are made, and some people have said like basically they're just like reproducing neofeudalism, but just like slightly better people in charge. I don't know, kind of like what did the United States do when it voted for Biden? Or what did you reform the system with but it looks a lot better, doesn't it? It looks a lot better than having somebody who's like grabbing stuff and just really gross and saying racist things, like really mask off, right? And partly it is a kind of critique of like the lack of change that happened. And part of it is Neofeud's, it isn't a masses-based movement. It's three people, and that's part of it, And part of it is it's a technical difficulty in storytelling and point-and-click adventure games. And also a technical difficult. I don't have assets to make like Neofeud 2. I'm trying to have mass, like there's full on like, the galactic workers of the worlds. It's like interstellar story. Galactic workers of the worlds. There's like citywide intergalactic strikes, general strikes, and like riots. But I realized that takes a lot of just physically to manifest that on screen. I'm like, I have to make 20 characters that are like simultaneously rioting, and it's taxing my work spoons, let's say, my ability to put this out in time with
under current, I am also like, I can't actually sit down for more than 2 hours at a time because of back issues and all this kind of thing. It's like I don't have time and energy to do all of this, so I had to kind of pare that down. But Neofeud 1, partially it suffers from a lack of capacity of myself to, part of it is a lack of knowledge that I don't have now, that I have now 4 years later. That it's it's 3 people, but also technically it's hard to do an adventure game with. I would argue this is a part of narratives in a Western sense, and narratives maybe narratives generally. It's like I remember this a Canadian Afghanistan veteran, in fact, that said it's basically impossible to make an anti-war movie because war is just too glorious. It's too photogenic. It's hard to make cinematic, visual, interactive or non-interactive, I would argue, storytelling, or maybe even books that really is entertaining, keeps people's attention, are like, make you laugh, cry, think, laugh, and all the things that we want stories to do without lying really about the horror and the reality and the banality actually of war. Because it's hard to make games, movies, books, and stories that are banal and boring. But a lot of poverty is actually kind of boring and ugly. A lot of war is boring and ugly at the same time sometimes. Slow, dry. Everybody's like, hi, I'm in 2020, I'm in 2021, and we're living in a cyberpunk dystopia where mega corporations run the world and we have like advanced technology that nobody has access to. But it's like really boring. Where's all the cool, neon green mohawks and the sleeveless jean jackets and all like the, where's my cyber armor, my flying car? It's like a mundane, boring dystopia. Yeah, it's not very entertaining, right? And that's part of a deep problem within, I would argue, just all stories generally. And it's hard to tell stories that are not lying about the way that actual human civilization and the way that war, violence, the violence of poverty in cyberpunk, in imperial metropoles, it's hard to tell the stories in a way that is really honest. To really be honest, like Boots Riley does a good job in Sorry to Bother You, where it's really a movie where the masses are centered not in the individual. It's problem with heroes, superheroes generally, which is like one strong individual saves everyone, as opposed to everyone working together collectively for and a mass-based movement like MAS, like China, like Vietnam. These are not like one, we put a Ho Chi Minh on the pedestal where there's a Mao. Without all of the people working together, and it's hard to, how do you visualize that, right? It's hard to tell that story. It can be very hard to tell that story, and a lot of it's not really the war part. It's the poverty alleviation, which is why the most successful movie in China is, in fact, it was a highest grossing movie is about poverty alleviation, my country, my people, my homeland. Which is, I got to figure out how they tell these stories that are not centering violence and war and oppression and or in cyberpunk survival and violence, and centering that and telling a story that's different. There's something to that. I really believe that's part of. There's a big problem is this putting on a pedestal good guys with a gun or good guys with superpower, or usually one guy, usually a white guy, like in Avengers, one white billionaire philanthropist arms dealer Playboy, or one Captain America. And that's a problem that I struggle with in Neofeud, and that's part of the egalite cooperatives, I believe. Missing thing is like Carl, Proto, they're like, like they're not, it's like, how do I tell this story without, to make it like really dramatic? Like, and this is somebody with superpowers. Like, because Proto's character is kind of like, it's like a Spider-Man-y, superhero-y kind of character in some ways. And this character has and there's a tendency, it's hard to tell a story that's really about them, that's about what really needs to be done, which is the masses coming together collectively to fight for themselves and liberate themselves. Anyways, so that's part of the struggle. At the same time, I do think there's the characters themselves represent the most impressed people, like Proto J's character, Carl Carbon, just an average working class, every person, and Sibyl as a very wealthy. And there is something to, at least in that metaphorically, like we need people to be class traders, to be first world traders or imperial traders. We need and to work together with oppressed people. There is something to that. They don't get to this finally the solution. So can you just read it one more time, like that what you really want me to touch on? With I think I missed part of that question about the.
No, you're definitely you're definitely touching on it. That was just basically it about why you chose to end it in that way and kind of make the critique. And I think it makes a lot of sense, as you were saying, that it is largely a critique of this kind of idea that like a few people, you know, or kind of like these great leaders or whatever can really make the revolutionary change we need. Like it does need to be a mass movement, right? So yeah.
I'll try to directly address that one. But that all does relate to it. Part of it is technical difficulty. Part of it is a critique. It's like that's not enough, and part of it is like I need to have an entertaining story so people like the game and give it a good review so I can make enough money to make Neofeud too. But it's really it is a critique at the end. I didn't want to end it on like everything's good now because the good queen's in charge. Like that would be too. That'd be too. It's not satisfying, but that would be way too hollow and kind of messed up and give everybody the wrong message, which is like all we got to do is vote for Princess Sibyl and then it's all fixed. You know, that's definitely not the message. But it's and at the very end, it's kind of like, you know, you sense that, you know, they have made some changes. There's some harm reduction. Like there's what is the rule? The egalite rule, which is that all billionaires and all the wealthy, you know, if you don't have to spend a year living in at the level of the most impoverished in the society for every year that they spend out of it. And it's not the best rule, but I mean, like there is something to like people being disconnected by class that and just living in completely separate worlds. You know, like if every German had to live at the poorest Namibian or the poorest Bolivian for a year, you know, and experience what they're actually experiencing, you know, before they go back in and work for $35 an hour, extorting all of their lithium with the backing of the United States. That might, I mean, that's not really something that's super feasible in the current circumstances, but there's something to a necessity of people to at least at the minimum listen, you know, to the most oppressed and not just go, oh, you just want ethno state. Oh, you just black nationalists. You just want to do what we want to do. Oh, you global South. Let the global North, let Europe and Canada, because America's bad. Okay. But Europe, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, we're good.
Yeah.
Let us lead the environmental revolution. Okay. We don't want to listen to you because we know what we're doing. We have some solar panels, even though we're all in bed with NATO, you know? So, you know, so there's something, I think that's something to that. But that's still with an individual in charge. And, you know, at the very end, she has command of the Garden of Forking Paths, which is the ability to quantum teleport. Oh, our rival dynasty, the Gates Waltons, are threatening me with, you know, antimatter missiles and neutron torpedoes. Well, I'll teleport their entire Air Force. I'll teleport the entire U.S. military-industrial complex into the Kuiper Belt with my reality manipulation power. So that's like, you know, it's kind of like, okay, the philosopher king is in charge, right? The Greek philosopher's king, the Greek philosopher king is in charge. You know, and I leave it kind of airy. Well, you know, it's kind of hard because people they don't like me because of these things I've done. They say I have too much power, but I'm good though. You know, I might have to just do a little regime change, you know, like, you know, I mean, I don't like Hillary Clinton because I'm all about the sharing economy and equality and equity, you know what I'm saying? But I might have to Hillary a few little Libyas and, you know, just up, you know, until they can govern themselves, as in the white man's burden describes, until Hawaii and Puerto Rico and all these people can govern themselves because we're civilized. I'm going to have to civilize them a little bit, you know? But I'm the good, civilized, very revolutionary, very, you know, de-traumatized, educated, good philosopher queen. And I forget what her final title is, but it's like, you know, the queen. I wanted to call her like the queen, the breaker of chains, mother of sentient machines, you know, the liberator, Sibyl the benevolent, Sibyl the egalite queen. I can't remember what her name is, but she has like this. One version of Neofeud 2 is where she has this incredibly illustrious litany of titles, and she lives forever and ever in a beloved galactic, very pleasant dictatorship of very nice white people, you know. But anyways, it does end on a very creepy note. And I kind of, it's part of it is like opening up Neofeud 2. It's one of the verses of Neofeud 2 is, and then she just goes full not good, you know. She goes full Daenerys, you know. I'm so sad that Game of Thrones ended with 2 bad final seasons because I was watching a lot of Game of Thrones and then playing Neofeud and then watching Blade Runner at night. Me and Holly was watching a lot of Game of Thrones, and it was an inspiration. The last 2 seasons kind of gave it a bad black eye. You know, it's sad because there's a lot in it, you know, about how, you know, and George R. R. Martin said, you know, this is actually like the War of the Roses. This is how Europeans treated each other, but it was actually worse. You think how bad it is in Game of Thrones with everybody starving and dying nasty, brutish, short lives and starving and fighting in horrible wars of vanity of the oligarchs and the aristocrats that rule them.
You think that's bad? And stabbing each other in the back constantly, just doing torture and rampant violence and suffering everywhere. You think that's bad? The actual European history is worse than that. And I like the honesty of that, because it's like, yeah, I mean, and like, that's a lot like capitalism is not much different than that. And that's part of the overlaying, is the intrigue that happens is kind of overlaying that and projecting that feudal executive kings. Like I think the original version of Neofeud was the Tywesters and the Lannis Starks. I was literally like using Game of Thrones like terminology, and a lot of the political intrigue was kind of like playing on the way that it's all a bunch of oligarchs and aristocrats causing suffering and death for everybody around them, fighting kind of like needless wars for their own self-aggrandizement, and that's kind of still what's happening. And so the Sibyl character ultimately, the first version of Neofeud. I don't want to say what Neofeud 2 is about, but one of them was just like, and then Sibyl just goes like, well, I give up. Or can you continue? There's a point in the game where she says, oh, remember that time when I went back in? One time I went back in time and I tried to start like a better Argentinian revolution, and I accidentally started World War III, and then I had to go back in time again and fix it. Oh, I mean, that totally didn't happen. There's actually a short story called Quantum Superposition, in which it's in the Neofeud short story collection. That's about the time that Sibyl went back in time and tried to make a global revolution and nuke the entire Earth. It's in the Neofeud short story collection. So part of that is it's like that's probably it's not really, I don't think it's really gonna happen that we're gonna have one super intelligent person, one person of whatever political bent running everything with access. It's kind of a leaves it open for the future potential bad guys, or who knows what happens. I'm not going to give away Neofeud 2's plot, but that's definitely a thing that I wanted to say. Like it is anyway. I'm saying so many words now. It is not satisfactory. It is a critique of the lack the lack of actual revolutionary change that happens. That's called revolutionary in Neofeud. It's good, not sufficient. So yeah.
Well, fantastic. This has been such a great conversation. I know it's been a little bit of a long one, but I'm definitely going to go back and put in the chapter markers so that anyone coming back to it can, find the different parts of the discussion really well. Thank you so much for all of this. You've shared so much, incredible educational content, and then really, really deep, character analysis, and it was just fantastic. So I guess maybe you could shout out for people where they can find you, where they can find the game. I mean, I've linked it in the description box below, like I said before, so people can check it out there. But maybe you can shout that out. And I know you're working on Neofeud 2 now, but do you have? I guess you don't have like an ETA on when people can expect that.
I apologize. I wanted to finish Neofeud 2 like in 2019, but I wanted to take 2 years instead of 2.5, but it's more closer to 4 now. But in my defense, like I did spend a lot of my time is spent trying to, because we are the Silver Spook Hui, the Silver Spook Cooperative. I do a lot of the, part of the streaming is of course trying to get people to see and put eyes on the game, to keep selling the game. When the game was first released, it sold like 100 copies. I was like, well, I made a game that is a cyberpunk, anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, anti-racist game that's about my personal experiences from an indigenous Hawaiian perspective. And that's great. And now 10 people will play it. And now I'm going to go teach school or find a job at Walmart or whatever I got to do. That was kind of bummer when it first came out. So shout out to everybody who has played Neofeud. Thank you, of course, very much for this platforming of myself, because there was American Johnson was one of the people that it was basically falling off so many games get released and nobody plays them, and they're just gone. Sell 10 copies. Okay, you spent 10 years of your life, now you can go. It's not fair. It sucks. But that's also, I accepted that's reality. That's something that could and does happen to a lot of very passionate, very talented people who make great works of art go unrecognized under the current system. And so thank you to all of the American Johnson and Luna who first platformed me into the left circles, and that really. We're going to be homeless at one point in the summer of 2019. And we're like, we needed to make more money. We got evicted, actually. We actually got evicted. And that sucked a lot, as it always does. And I said, I was brought on the EJ show. I wasn't really in the online left that much. And EJ brought me on. I talked about Neofeudal, how it's an anti-capitalist cyberpunk takedown of all of these things I was talking about. And it like sold like $500 worth of Neofeud that day, because people were like, I'd never heard of this. And, you know, so so it's only with the kind and gracious mutual aid of many friends and strangers, of others, and many of them are leftists of varying types. So again, everything I say is, I'm saying all this in aloha. You know, I'm saying all this in love. I don't hate nobody's, you know, from anywhere, of any melanin counts and any nations and anywhere, you know. But I try to be, I'm sometimes honest, and that in a very real way. But I really appreciate everybody that supported everything that we do, because without it, I would not be streaming at all. I wouldn't be doing any of this. I would probably we might still be on Oahu, and we'd all be sad, and I'd be still working, not educating myself on my own culture, not educating other people on what Hawaii is and indigenous issues, and not doing all these things, and not doing a lot of things. But that's with the help of people going, hey, you should check out this Neofeud game. You're just telling someone on your Discord, hey, you cyberpunk nerd, you know, you like Shadowrun, I see what we played CP 2020. Remember that? Hey, this game is like this based indigenous made cyberpunk game. I mean, whatever it is, that really does help us out, because without that, I can tell you, I wouldn't be doing Neofeud 2. I wouldn't be doing no streaming. The last 4 years would just be like trying to survive more under capitalism, and then not able to do that work. So when we offer people like housing and these kind of, and all the other things that we do, and I try to do, like when BP and Professor Flowers, who are like, you know, some of our comrades that are like trying to get BP and other people housed, I try to show up for those, because I know what it's like to try to be doing good work, but having to develop, to put most of your time and energy into just trying to survive. So thank you everybody who has supported it. Neofeud so thank you so much for having me on here, for the shout outs. And thanks so much for the opportunity. And also, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. What was the other things you want me to say?
Just so people can find you. So
yeah. So at Silver Spook Guy is my my personal Twitter for the games stuff. Like when Neofeud 2 comes out. I'm sorry, I don't have an ET. I'm trying to finish it in 2021, but it looks like I probably won't. But I'm working on it. I'm trying to get out. If you can get it out of 2021, I will. But I have limitations, and I have other responsibilities and kuleana to do. But yeah, Neofeud. You can find me at Silver Spook Guy. You can find me at Silver Spook Games. It updates on Neofeud 2 if it comes out. I'll be mentioning it there. If I have a release date, it'll be at SILVR minus the E in silver, Spook Games, and I forget where. Just Google Silver Spook and you find me in a lot of places. I think I have a Twitch stream. I think I have a YouTube channel. Silver Spook Games. I'm pretty sure I have those things. And but yeah, selling Neofeud, and I have a Patreon that you can find on those sites. And all the support, or just telling people about the game works. Just if you can do me one thing, you know, if somebody's mentioned Hawaii and how they want to travel there, like don't travel here right now, too many people, too much COVID right now. And also, you know, just drop them hey, there's a Silver Spook thread about, you know, things about Hawaii that you might not know, you know, and just tell them some things that you have learned, and that goes a long way to start to debunk a lot of nonsense about us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so, yeah, just again, the links are in the description box below, and you should definitely subscribe to Silver Spook and sign up for their Patreon. So yeah, thank you so much. And thanks everyone for watching. And I hope you enjoy the game if you do play it. And let's do this again sometime.
Definitely. Thank you so much.